6-time IFBB Pro Champ, and most importantly, Chris Bumstead's brother-in-law.
When I was fucking 19, 20, whatever, and I was doing all my own shit, I'd do, 700 milligrams a week or something here and there. Those years when I was doing that, I was getting tons of side effects and didn't actually make a ton of progress. But when I kind of figured out my food and my training and kind of the sweet spot for that, with Patrick, I definitely found with that more than other drugs, there is a point of diminishing returns. The more I used, my physique kind of looked a bit weird. A lot of the years I was coaching Chris, I didn't know a lot. I started coaching Chris when I was really young, and I was kind of figuring this all out at the same time, with him. Things that I would have done from a nutrition standpoint or training advice I gave him at the beginning. 10 years later, I would have been like, what the fuck was I thinking telling him this? We shit the bed completely. In a car when you're TREN or haloed out, if someone does something that normally you'd be like, fuck this guy, and move on for 30 seconds. I'm road rage, chasing this guy down, fucking tailgating him. That's the only place I would experience it is in the fucking car. The oral BPC 157 with this KPV, it's made a big difference in my overall feeling of appetite and digestive motility. For the most part, in my off season, I generally would operate at 2 compounds, maybe a third. I kind of kept it the same off season prep in terms of my testos. It was pretty much always 700. And Patrick has said this before. He's like, look, if I could put you on stage with 1 gram of carb and 5 liters of water, or with 1 million grams of carbs and 0 water, he's like, I'm picking all day.
Before starting this podcast, I just wanted to say that ideating steroids for a full show is not widely accepted because it discounts the real work, which is the backbone of this sport. And unfortunately spreads that an unsafe chemical solution is all you need for results. Both of these are antithetical to society's understanding of the sport. And while there will always be some that claim that PEDs are all you need, I would like to deliver an honest message of what is required for achieving top performance, as well as the dangers associated with this route. I received this comment from a user named Nightscarens. But just as a rock climber, the athletes undergoing this path in the sport are willing to put their life on the line for their passion. Just the danger between the two sports is different. Luckily, we do have safety nets in the sport, such as organ imaging and regular blood work. But that doesn't change the high risk one must accept in taking on this competitive lifestyle. I'm also super poor, and so I'm having all this, I have all this secondhand crappy podcast devices and shit. So
that's funny.
Yeah, I need to buy a new headphone because my headphones, in the wire, they're one tiny little piece of the wire detaches, and then now you have to bend it in the perfect way for you to hear anything.
For it to work,
yeah, that's what's happening. So something that I really enjoyed from some of the discussions. I mean, you've had a million discussions on podcast places and everything, but I was listening to your podcast with Hanny, and I thought it was hilarious when you were talking about how you wanted to switch to Patrick. And you were saying that I was trying to figure out what it was, if they have some kind of European secret or something in there.
I mean, it's one of those grass is always greener. It's the thing of when you've never used one drug, you think it's the secret. It's guys that have never used growth hormone think that once they get GH, it's going to be the secret to being fucking rammy, or that when you get to that level, then it's well, when I get good IGF, when I get Increlex, that'll be the next thing. The European coaches were that thing for me at the time, It was the one thing that I thought everything would be different. And in some ways it was, but I mean, in most ways, let's be serious. What all these coaches are doing is 95% the same.
Yeah.
What it's coming down to is their intuition and how and when they're making the decisions. You know, in terms of the drugs they're using, there's small variances, but they're all kind of comparable. Some guys do certain different things differently. But it was more so, it's at the end of the day, it's just the decision-making time at the appropriate times. And that's what separates guys like, Hani or Patrick or these guys that end up being top coaches is they make the right calls at the right time,
Yeah. This is something I was discussing with Kyle too. When I had a podcast with him and Jared, and we were discussing their new coaching with Nick. Sure. He was basically saying same thing as obviously they had a little bit of backlash when it first started, right? They're who is Kyle? He's some fucking influencer coach shit. And then they're Jared, this fucking science-based ass lifter, all the typical shit. And fucking dude with hair. Yeah. And, and then Kyle was well, that's the secret, right? The secret is literally the athlete is going to look good with whoever the fuck they're with. Yeah. Right. Yeah. The difference is how well they work together.
Yeah.
And obviously figuring out what works best for that athlete, right? Timing.
Yeah, no, exactly. And then look, like the first show Patrick and I did together, we shit the bed like completely. Like the first, well, sorry.
Oh, that's good news. Because I'm with Patrick now.
The first show I did with him after I'd been working with him for like a week. So I did Vancouver Pro with Matt in 2016 or 2019. 2019? Yeah, 2019. And then like 2 weeks, I left Matt, and 2 weeks later, I did Tampa Pro with Patrick. And I did look a lot better, but I was already in shape. Like it had all been done. We did some small changes. But then we did the Tampa Pro the following year where I lost to Hunter, and I looked fucking brutal, like probably one of the worst showings I've ever had. But he learned from that like super quick. Like we did a bunch of things, and then he immediately learned like this didn't work, this didn't work, this didn't work. And he pivoted very quickly. And from then I never lost a show again with him. Like literally I won the New York Pro, and every other than Olympias and Arnold's, every other show I did with him for the next 4 years, I never lost, you know? So, once we found that system, which he pivoted very quickly, and that's the difference is, it didn't take him 15 shows to figure it out or scrambling around. He remembered what he did. He remembered where he looked back and saw, okay, the look was good here. The look was good here. The look was good here. Oh, fuck, it wasn't good here. Okay, we got it a bit back here when we did this. And then it was kind of like finding that spot of like, okay, these are the things that are definite do nots. These are some things that definitely improved your look. And then kind of found that look and fine tuned it. And then we never after that show with that Tampa, I never really had a look that was like bad. I was pretty much on the money every show, maybe bar my last Olympia, but even then, like I was still pretty good. A lot of that was more my own doing with like nerves and stuff like that. It wasn't necessarily like that bad of a look. It was just, a combination of a few things. But I mean, yeah, once we figured that out, which he did very quickly, I mean, we pretty much hit the nail on the head every time.
What was it that you shit the bed with in that first show? Do you guys feel like?
Yeah, for me, I'm very, very sensitive to water manipulations. And Patrick has said this before. He's like, look, if I could put you on stage with 1 gram of carb and 5 liters of water, or with, 1 million grams of carbs and 0 water, he's like, I'm picking the water all day. And it's so true with my physique. Like if I start to really heavily limit water, I just lose this size and this fullness and this pop to my look. And you can see it even in like my day to day, like in my progress pictures, like from morning to night, even if my food was very low, just from hydrating a few liters over the day, I would look dramatically bigger and fuller, but with very little like water, like subcutaneous water. Like I wouldn't get watery throughout the day, but I really like hold a lot of like intracellular, like intramuscular water without holding it in the skin. So for that Tampa Pro, we had really limited water, like really tapered it down going into the show. And use some Directs, like nothing crazy. I mean, I think we'd use like a fucking half a Dizide or quarter Dizide, nothing like out of the, nothing crazy at all. But it was more just actual water limitations and sodium limitations that we kind of done. And then we actually, the next show we did New York Pro, like, I don't know, a couple of weeks later, a month later, we did the complete opposite. We're like, all right, let's just try this on the complete other end of the spectrum where we limited water and we, did some stuff with sodium. Let's do none of that. Let's just get you onto the stage exactly doing what you've been doing all week. Like if you drank 7 liters of water the day before, let's just drink 7 liters of water, drink like you're normally drinking the day of the show. And that's exactly what we did. We used 0 diuretics, 0 water manipulation. We manipulated sodium to a very small degree, but only like in the last like couple hours just to get a little more pop. And we didn't do anything like crazy dramatic in terms of a carb up. We just kind of built it up slowly throughout the week. There was never any like 1,000-gram days or anything like that. And we just kept drinking and kept eating like normal. And I went on stage and won the New York Pro looking like that. So that wasn't, I don't think, rendered the best look, but at least now we've done things on both ends of the spectrum. We've done like heavy limitation of water and sodium manipulation. And then we've done none. And then we say, okay, we definitely are way better on this side of the spectrum. And then from there, we just did like a small bit of fine tuning over the next few shows, until we found a system that honestly we never changed for 3-4 years after that. And what I did in terms of my peak process from then all 2020, 21, the years I was winning Texas, Tampa, 7th at the Olympia both times, 2nd at the Arnold, all those, my peak process was literally like carbon copy almost. There's some small changes because maybe you're coming from one show to the next, or how your body's responding, but the process was virtually identical every single show after that.
What would you feel like are the small changes whenever you're going to another show, like back to back?
Yeah, it really depends. If they're really close in proximity, for me, I definitely And if you're flying, like flying obviously will have an impact. You know, if you're going to fly from like, say you're doing a show in,
hate flying.
Yeah, if you're doing a show in like Florida and then the next week you're doing a show in like Spain, I mean, that's a tough turnover, and you're really, really going to have to limit carb intake, especially for me, for the first couple of days, you know, especially until any of those diuretics and your body's kind of rehydrated from that first show, you know, to 100%. So you're not like rebounding in from a water perspective. And then we just try and keep it as low as we can, get all that water out from the flying, and then kind of build up from there into the show. So, yeah, it really depends on the circumstance, you know, but it's definitely getting, you know, any of that kind of that peak that you did and getting your body kind of to reset after that back to your baseline as fast as possible, and then kind of building up into the next one again after that.
Gotcha. I always felt, I mean, I guess it's something that obviously most competitors have to deal with anyways, but how do you feel like you guys had to deal with, like, what was the longest amount of time that you felt like you had back-to-back competitions? Like you would basically stay on this almost peak conditioning. 2021
was the year I did Tampa Pro. I won Tampa in like, I don't know, beginning of July or something, end of June, July. I did Texas Pro like a week later. And then that was the year during like the COVID years when they moved the Arnold to the end of the year. So that year, because they'd canceled it at the beginning of the year, they moved it to like October. It was like, I don't know, a month or 2 weeks or something before the Olympia. So I did Tampa to Texas, flew directly there. And then I kept into that, like had a small kind of period where I came up a bit, you know, maybe 10, 15 pounds over stage weight, and then right back down into the Arnold, and then the Arnold into the Olympia. So that 4 string, I've done more shows in a year before, but they were a little more spread out than that. That was kind of going from like, you know, end of July to, or maybe even August when Texas was, until like October. So like I had 4 shows within that, you know, 3-month period, whatever it was. That was probably the most I've done in close proximity. You know, I've done ones where I did like, you know, shows in June and then, you know, had a month off or 2 months off and then did a show in November, whatever, blah, blah, blah. But that was the most I've done in close proximity for sure.
Gotcha. So one of the reasons I'm curious with this, which obviously I feel like I'm going to figure this out for myself, because I actually started working with Patrick maybe 8-9 months ago or so. And this was after I was like, I mean, obviously I'd been following him for a while, but you know, bro, like including you, Patrick fucking just always has the monsters for some fucking reason, you know. Stefan NFC pops up, freaking knee hat, looks like a fucking animal, bro. He's like 22 years old or 21 or something crazy. Right now. And obviously Keon, and then I'm just like, dude, I got to figure out what this European secret is too. So, and also I really fucking, just like you too, like I really love that the way that he like communicates, and like he has this kind of sort of like I feel like I'm talking to like a sensei master or something sometimes, bro. Like
Patrick always had like, it's a very direct, but like a not like an aggressive direct. It's like a calming direct. And he also is like, he has this like dad energy about him. Like you said, like a sensei dad mentor energy, you know, which is, look, like when I was working with Matt, we did great things, but like Matt was so much the same age as me. And look, I don't think your coach has to be 30 years older than you. I think there's tons, like Kyle and Nick are the same age, but for me, you know, like finding someone that I looked to more as like a hierarchy, like you said, like a sensei instead of like a peer, I think did a lot for me for sure, you know?
Yeah, I think it's the same with me. I don't know, maybe it's because I'm Asian or some shit, but honestly, I really love working with Kyle, and he was the best coach I've ever had to this date so far. I haven't done a prep with Patrick yet, but I also felt like our age was so similar, and like, you know, I kind of like the way that we would interact with each other was more bro-y and stuff. So I mean, I really liked it, but I just I always was interested in working with Patrick, and I feel like having that kind of like, I don't know, I was always taught this kind of perception of having discipline and
and you become like eager to please them in a way. Like that sounds kind of fucking sus, but like, you know what I mean?
Said it a bunch of times. I get it.
But like you want to like impress them. It's like, you know, Patrick's seen so many good bodybuilders. He's been around for so long, and like he's older than me. And like it was just like I had this respect, you know, for like the age hierarchy there, and experience hierarchy, right?
Yeah. So I guess what I've always been curious about though is like, obviously I'm sure I'll figure this out with him in my upcoming shows, but I was always stressed out about the thought of doing a lot of back-to-back shows, like over a prolonged period of time, Like if I do like 2 or 3 shows or something in a row or so, I mean, like, I don't feel like that's too big of a deal, but I think the thought of 1, being in that conditioned state, and then 2, I guess prolonging the compound uses, especially for orals. Like if it shows like maybe 2 weeks after, I would suppose that I'm not really coming off the orals. If it's like 6 weeks after, then I don't know, maybe we'll decide to come off for a small period of time. I'm not sure. Yeah. It depends. Right.
Yeah.
So I just always would get worried because I'd feel like that look would just fade naturally.
Yeah. I mean, I always look, I know it's not with everyone. I always get better the more shows in succession I did. You know, like I've never in my life, in 35 pro shows or shows I've done, I never, ever, ever in my life looked best my first show of the season, ever. Never once. Generally, if I did a full year of competition, 4, 5, 6 shows, whatever, my first show was almost always my worst show. And I found for me, getting the body fat to low levels and then kind of like perfecting the look from there with like carb manipulation and stuff like that. And I think there's obviously something to be said with just having drugs in you longer, you know what I mean? Yeah. To an extent. But also, managing that, like you said, if the shows are, say I have a show 1 week apart, okay, yeah, you're going to keep all the same drugs in. But then if I have like now 8 weeks, 6 weeks to the Arnold, like after Texas, okay, which ones are we taking out? Which ones are we putting in, and kind of management of those through there to obviously keep your body like, look, an unhealthy body to an extent will not be effective at burning fat and looking really good. If a guy's liver is like fucked to the nines, I mean, burning fat becomes very, very difficult. So, obviously you have to manage those things as well from like a health marker standpoint to make sure your body's actually responsive, right? Right.
Yeah. Going back to the peaking thing, you mentioned that when you guys started maintaining the amount of like water, I guess, that you were consuming, rather than like prioritizing carb load and then, decreasing water intake, that turned out a better look for you. But that wasn't necessarily the best. Like, was there a time that you remember it being like, oh, this is the best peak? Like this is
the best peaks. And like I said, I think probably my best peaks were, probably 2020 Olympia was probably my best overall peak. I don't know if it was my best physique ever. Probably pretty close. But that was the same year, like I'd done the Tampa where I lost to Hunter and looked really bad. And then the New York where I won, it was like my first real season with Patrick. And that Olympia, I think is the first show we kind of tried in the middle ground. It actually we hit pretty good on that. So it was kind of like a happy medium, but leaning more towards the side of like water sparing. And not too crazy. Like, look, I have a lot of muscle when I was competing. I needed a lot of food, obviously. But we were never like going too crazy with it, in like 2-day durations where I was like packing in food like too crazy, because I was keeping an amount of water in that was allowing that glycogen to really develop. Right. So I've done it both ways. I've done it where you really limit water, but you need to really be packing the food in because it's not going to stick quite the same when you don't have that water with it to create the glycogen. Right. So, I think that Olympia, we kind of found a happy middle ground of like, we reduced water a little bit, but not anything too crazy. Like, the day before the show, like I definitely didn't drink less than like 4 liters of water. Like it wasn't like I was down to like a liter of water, 250 mils every 3 hours. Like it was nothing like crazy limited. And the day of the show, I still, drank some water for sure. And the Olympia is a 2-day show as well. So, managing that over a 2-day period and keeping hydration, not losing the look and getting the look back, after prejudging for the finals is something you have to manage as well. But yeah, no, it was, as minimal. It's such an obvious thing to say, but you can really eliminate a lot of like variables just by being in really fucking good shape. If you're peeled out of your mind, it's really hard to fuck things up. So that's kind of the way that we just looked at things is like, get ready early, be able to, if we get ready early, then we can have a little more play in terms of carb manipulation to keep performance high. Cause like for me, especially like a lot of my look and a lot of my fat burning even, was driven through my training, not through like cardio or diet or anything like that. Like I trained very intense and, that was one of the driving factors for me in terms of managing my look. And if I noticed my performance went down by noticeable degrees in the gym, my look usually changed with it pretty significantly. So for me, it was managing performance in the gym, so starting prep a little earlier, doing a longer prep, getting ready a little earlier, being able to keep a bit more food in, kind of manage that, through the food going into the show. And then just being in really good condition so that we didn't need to try and jump through hoops with, excess diuretics or, water manipulations or sodium manipulation to get a level of dryness that we didn't already have. If it's already there, it's not usually worth the risk to try and gain an extra 1%. We would do the very minimals, a quarter diazide, an eighth of a diazide, just to take the edge off so you could eat, and that any little excess there you could kind of get off if that's how it works. But we were never like doing anything too crazy from that because it wasn't worth the risk other than, controlling the variable beforehand of like just getting in good shape and you don't have to worry about it,
Mm-hmm. That's pretty similar to how my peaking was with Kyle at my first pro show with him. The water manipulation was like very, what's the word? It was just minimal, I guess.
Yeah.
And I mean, to be honest, it was to the point where like, I was kind of shocked that this was happening to me and I was a little bit embarrassed about it. But, when we were on stage, like, I did men's physique for my first pro show. Not sure why, but, they had us on stage for a full hour, which was kind of insane.
Oh God.
Like they were like switching us on and off. And obviously this one was one of the shows where it was, during the summer, it was warm and like the lights were really hot. So we were all sweating, all of us, at least a little bit. So they would literally have to call us off stage, dap us up, and then put us back on stage to continue. Right.
Yeah.
And I swear to God, I was sweating the most, bro. Like I was just having like these fucking drip pulls along my entire body. And, in my head, I'm like, did we do this right? Or am I like too watery or something? But in my opinion, I feel like that was still the best look I've had so far. At least on stage.
I mean, people say all these things, about like, okay, if you didn't limit water enough when you're sweating or blah, 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 all these things. But there's something to be said of like, if it's really hot, you're going to sweat. Like if you're not sweating, you're dead. You know what I mean? Like you have to be able to sweat. It's how your body releases heat, gets rid of, expels heat and like cools you down, is through sweating. So like if it's hot on stage, they're working you a long time. It's just because it's hot. And a lot of people like to say it's peak issues. And look, sometimes it is, a lot of times it's cortisol, it's stress issues. We could say like Martin this past weekend in Pittsburgh, he was really the only guy that was sweating there. But I think Martin was probably the most stressed of any guy on stage. I think he really didn't want to fucking lose to Nick. And I think when you kind of the reality set in that he potentially was, I think there was a big cortisol dump. His look changed, his demeanor changed, and sweat started to come. So, I think there's a few factors that kind of control the sweating on stage. But like, look, if it's friggin' hot as shit on stage and there's a million rounds of posing, I would hope you would sweat, because if you don't sweat, your body can't expel that heat. And it's probably not going to do anything good to you internally,
Yeah, for sure. Thinking about Martin too, it's like, I don't doubt in any way whatsoever that Nick performs really well under pressure.
Oh yeah.
But like, it's so crazy though, that like the place that they were both coming into the show and where, there's all this expectation on Martin, and then Nick, like he's been having like these 2 years of almost backlash.
Yeah.
And out of nowhere fucking looks like that, dude.
I know.
So,
well, I mean for Nick, like, obviously Derick had a lot of pressure on him for the show because he just, beat the #1 bodybuilder in the world at the Arnold. So coming in here, he's kind of like deemed the favorite. So you want to uphold that. But like you said, I mean, Nick had, let's be serious, a fucking god awful last 2 years. I mean, he really didn't have a spectacular New York pro. He missed the Olympia before that because of the hamstring. He pulled out last year because they just weren't ready, which is a really bad look. And his fan base was starting to turn against him a little bit. The bodybuilding world had kind of counted him out. And it kind of puts you in a good position in one way, in that like you almost feel like you have nothing to lose. But it also puts you in another way of like, hey, if I don't perform here, like I've put a stamp on like the fucking death of my career here in a sense, So like Nick had a ton of pressure going to the show, man. And like Nick showed up, like, and he showed up like crazy. And I mean, I personally had him winning the show. But it's tough for Martin because Martin's had such such a peak in his career so quickly. Like he came from a guy that like, he never even won a show until like last year, like last year's Detroit Pro was the first pro show we ever won. He wasn't a guy that was like in the mix with these guys. He kind of been, showing up at Texas, these shows, he was second, fourth, third, whatever, and kind of building up slowly. And then all of a sudden now he's tossed into the mix with almost beating Nick at New York, but it was a less than stellar Nick. So who knows how good Martin really is. And then he comes fourth at the Olympia. So then everyone's like, holy fuck. So now Martin perceives himself as the fourth best bodybuilder in the world, as he should. But now you've set your standard to beat basically everybody except for 3 guys in the world, except for Hottie, Sampson, and Derick. He's like, okay, I should beat everybody else. And he particularly doesn't like Nick, you know? So I think going into that show, he probably put a lot of pressure on himself, maybe not to win the show, but to at least at the bare minimum beat Nick. So it's like, if Derick's going to win, I think look, if Martin had been second and beat Nick, I don't think we would have seen a demeanor change like we did. But because I think he thought he was losing to Nick, I mean, that was really what his expectation and pressure for himself on was that show, was to just beat Nick, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. I had actually, I just watched half of the bro chat that just came out with you guys.
Yep.
When did you guys film that?
Last night.
Yeah. Was that after Tyler Mannion's post?
No,
came out
before. Yeah.
Oh, it was right before.
Yeah.
What did you think about Tyler Mannion's breakdown on the open?
Yeah, I mean, he kind of had the same opinion we did. I mean, I was kind of happy when I saw his breakdown because his opinion was kind of the same as ours. I mean, you know, you almost feel outlandish when you're giving a breakdown from a show and you have Derick not winning a back pose. You feel like, man, if we say this shit online, people are going to tell us we're fucking retarded. And then Tyler said the exact same thing. So I'm like, oh, thank God it's not just us, you know? But yeah, I mean, he had almost the exact same opinion as us. Like he had him, you know, winning the same poses, losing the same poses. It was close on some, you know, and I think that's exactly how it was. I mean, the thing with Nick is because he is so muscular, your eyes are just drawn to him on stage. And because there was the comeback story, you want him to win. But it was a really close show. I did have Nick winning. And I do agree with Tyler's opinion. Tyler himself said he did have Nick winning the show, you know?
Yeah.
He himself did. But he also said, you know, he had Martin beating Nick last year. So it's not like there's some kind of Nick favoritism going on here. I mean, he's being as unbiased as possible. But yeah, no, I thought he did a great transparent breakdown of the show. And I agreed on basically everything he said, right?
Yeah, I do too. Plus, I mean, in regards to the politics thing, like I can understand some people's like, I guess perspective on that, especially, I guess, especially considering what people have said has happened in the history of the IFBB, like years back, whether or not some of it is true or not. But I just, I always find some of the positions people take on politics a little bit silly, because I feel like it's a cop out for every single kind of, every single turnout. Right. And I also agree that I just feel like it would be more beneficial low key for this to be this giant fucking thing where Nick Walker takes the win and goes to Olympia. And now people are talking about like the 4 different guys that it could be, or is Nick actually going to take it versus, you know, Samson or Derick or whatever. I just feel like that would like cause a lot more hype in general.
Yeah.
Versus
I
just
agree.
like the small amount, I guess, of like extra tickets and views that are going to go to the New York Pro.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I mean, cause that's the thing people are saying is right. Like, you know, by having Nick lose here, that he has to go do New York, and, you know, Steve's the head judge. He wants him to do his show to sell more, whatever, blah, blah, blah. But like you said, I mean, you know, it's obviously a lot more beneficial for them to have Nick win that show and go to the Olympian. Now you have 4 guys, like, you know, Nick just beat Derick. Derick had just beat Samson, who won the previous Olympia. You know, Hottie's still in the mix. Like, you create a lot more of an interesting storyline by having Nick win that show than you ever do by Derick, right?
I feel like with the way that it is now, I would almost think like, I don't know how Nick's going to do at Olympia as much anymore. Like, I don't know if you can really consider him. I guess, I mean, obviously, in my opinion, it's going to just all depend on how they look that day on Olympia. But I mean, if you were thinking in a political sense, like,
yeah, I mean, it's tough because like it would be frustrating for me for sure. And I'm sure it is for Nick when you're like, this wasn't even the best Derick and I couldn't beat him. What the fuck does that, like, will I ever beat him? If I didn't beat him here, will I ever beat him? And I'm sure that's like a tough mindset to get over, because like Nick was at his best here and Derick wasn't, and he still lost, even though a lot of people, I mean, the majority of people, other than the judges, thought that Nick should have won. You know, so it's like, for him, it's like, well, what the fuck, what can I even do to win here? Am I always going to lose to Derick? I mean, this would be a very frustrating place to be in. It's like, does Derick have to fucking slip up even more for me to beat him? So, you know, it definitely puts you in a tough spot mentally going into the Olympia, but I'm sure Nick will take that as like a challenge and he'll fire him up to, you know, go fucking obliterate everyone in New York and then go to the Olympia and have his best shot at Derick as he can, right? Right,
yeah. Plus, I mean, I was totally in the position too that thinking Nick should win this show. Like when I was watching too, when I saw them hit that back pose, I feel like the first thing that came to my mind, and I'm sure it came to a lot of people's mind, is like, holy shit, that's Derick's lights out pose. Yeah. But Nick looks like a fucking animal. Like Nick looks like he's taken out this pose by far.
Yeah,
like,
no, I had Nick winning the back double. The back lat, I think, was a bit closer, like Tyler said, because the arms and shoulders are taken out of the equation a little bit. But I mean, Nick from the waist down is so good, and his back is close enough to Derick's. Derick still has a better back, but you know, like I think if you're rating just the back, it's like a 10-9 for Derick. But then if you're rating like the hamstrings, adductors, and the arms and shoulders, it's like a 10-7 for Nick, you know? So I definitely gave him the back double. The back lat I thought was close, but I could see it making a case for either guy on that one.
Yeah. I was a little bit sus about the comparison with their side tricep. Because I know that sometimes Nick turns a little too much, right? Whenever he does the side tricep.
He was turned too much, yeah.
But I think in the comparison that Tyler had, Nick was turned actually less than Derick.
Okay.
So, I mean, that's what I was curious about that one because I wasn't actually there.
On stage, he was overturning most of the time. He was exposing like way too much from the front. You know, I think you do need to turn a little bit to show a bit of shoulder width and give a little more dimension to the pose. But he, for the most part, was over rotating that shot on stage for sure. Yeah. Where he was losing a bit of the like side leg freakiness that he has in the side chest when it's a little more perpendicular. And then just, it wasn't making his upper body and his midsection look as good as it could if he was just under rotating a little more. You know? Yeah.
I think Derick definitely took that pose, but mostly just, I don't know. I definitely feel like if Nick improved his posing and flexibility, maybe, then there was a big potential for him to take that instead.
Yeah. Nick can win that pose for sure. Like, you know, he has bigger arms, better shoulders, you know, a better side leg. I mean, Derick has one of the best side legs in the world, but Nick's side leg was better at this show. And when he's actually posing, his midsection control is very, very good. And he has way more developed abs than Derick does. And their chests are pretty comparable in a side tricep. I mean, it's not like a pose that shows off your chest a lot. So yeah, I mean, I think if Nick can get a little more air out and sit onto that shot a little more like Derick is, not be quite up so tall up, sit into it just a little more. I don't think you should ever be crunched down, but just sitting a little more and then just rotating a little bit less, enough to show the shoulder width, but not so much that you're like facing the front of the stage. I think that's definitely a shot he can win.
Right. So I just wanted to say this personally, just because this is the truth and this is really what I think and how I feel. But like, first off, before I say it, is like, I really do think that I think the IFBB is going in an amazing direction, and I fucking love what Tyler's doing. Plus, I feel like like the fact that Tyler has his voice and he also does all these breakdowns, it almost makes me feel like I can relate to the federation a little bit more rather than like some other federations that are just led by, no offense, but like really old people.
Yeah.
So I don't know. It just feels a lot more relatable to me, and I feel like I don't know. It's really cool to be able to like hear the feedback from him, and all of it seems to click in my personal opinion. But I think the one thing that like they could really improve on is like really defining things like tiebreakers, because I think that's where a lot of people are getting very confused here. And one of the points that you guys made that I felt like was a really good point is like, I totally agree that Nick really does let his gut out whenever I think there's like excitement, people are resting, or like there's breaks in between poses, or he's like on the side. Yeah. Right. And we don't know if that's what's.
Yeah. Sorry. And those small things like matter a lot when you have a show that's that close, right?
Yeah. That's what I would think too. I mean, plus, I mean, the one thing though is like, I'm wondering, like, are all of these 11 judges in the same page of like what is contributing to breaking the tie for them, right? Like, I know there was actually like a third round where they purposely broke the tie, right?
Yeah.
But I'm not like, normally they rate each athlete pose to pose. So like, where's the opportunity for them to rate someone when they're on the sidelines or they're not looking so good, right?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if like, when you're actually judging, it's not necessarily just like, this guy wins this pose, this guy wins this pose. It's good when Tyler does it in terms of a breakdown pose by pose, but it's always not so much the tangibles of pose by pose. Sometimes it is the intangibles, especially when it's close, like tan, guys sweating, posing, even just stuff that you're kind of, when you're chilling between moments, like midsection control and things like that. Like, I do think those things all add up, especially when a show is close. And yeah, I mean, they did have Nick winning at prejudging, and I'm sure a lot of the judges, like Tyler included, they had Nick winning, right? I mean, especially at the prejudge, there's 9 judges, so it would have been 5 judges to 4 or whatever it is. So I think it was a very close show, but yeah, I think some of those intangibles were not intangibles, they are tangibles, but some of those small like nuances of like the, maybe not hitting a pose correctly when they're like, all right, we're 4-4 for poses, which one could we maybe go a different direction on here? We need to break this tie. or, when they came back for that third round, like Nick didn't have quite as much glaze on, didn't control his midsection quite as good as he did in the earlier rounds. So like there's some very small things that if you are already broken on it, like those things wouldn't have changed my mind as a judge. I still would have had Nick winning. But if you're looking at this and you're like, fuck, I'm really torn on this, some of those small things could lead you into one direction or the other, right?
Yeah. Well, I'm really fucking excited for the New York Pro. So, I mean, I guess that.
Yeah, I mean, at least like
that now.
Yeah, I'm excited to see Nick up there again. But I mean, let's be serious. Nick is going to fucking mutilate that lineup. I mean, it's not even going to be close. I mean, there's no one even in his ballpark in that show. I mean, Bonac is the next closest guy, but I mean, Bonac is an amazing bodybuilder, but Nick is at a different level right now. So, so yeah, I mean, I expect Nick to be extremely dominant in that show for sure. But there's some guys I'm excited to see in the lineup for sure. Yeah.
I feel really bad too for I'm brain farting right now. So this is really terrible. I just brain fart all the time. Like I forget everyone's name now I know it. So, there was like a couple posts of comparing Nick to, who the other person competing. That's like
Crizzo.
No. Oh my God.
Who else is in the show? Crizzo, Bonac, that Ken Colossus guy.
He's tall.
He's tall. Regan.
Regan. Yeah.
Regan.
Posted about Regan. And I just felt so bad because
Regan.
Everyone was just like, oh,
look,
man.
I like Regan. He's a Canadian guy, but like, it's a different level of bodybuilder, man. I mean, Nick is way bigger, way freakier, way, gets in better condition. He's definitely more balanced. Regan has some good spots. He's got a great back, but Nick obviously showed he has one of the best backs in the world by beating Derick fucking Lunsford in a back double. So like having a great back is not enough to beat someone with a back as good as Nick's. And then he's still slight in some areas, like his quads still historically need more, and his conditioning is generally his like pitfall. So no, yeah. I mean, I don't even have Regan a second. I'd love to say Regan would be second. I mean, I like Regan, and I think he's a good bodybuilder and has a really pretty physique, but he's definitely not at the level of being compared to Nick yet,
Yeah. I think it's fucking crazy how much Nick brought his legs up too, though. Like even his legs, like his lower body in the back double bi is like one of
ridiculous. Yeah.
Dude, it's fucking insane, man.
Yeah. No, I mean, he has the best hamstrings and adductors in the planet. I mean, the only guy you could maybe in terms of size wise that's comparable is like Samson. He's got crazy wide adductors and hamstrings and sweeping legs from the back. But he doesn't get in the condition that Nick gets in. So Nick's definitely are more impressive to me,
Yeah. This is what really has me curious on just like how much the IFBB is still going to continue to prioritize keeping that gut small. Cause I know like in the last few years, like people have been, fucking banging that, like keep the waist small, like, count them off if the waist isn't, but
yeah, I mean, look, we've seen it definitely over the last like decade. I mean, how heavy guys, I mean, Phil Heath lost Olympia to Sean Roden over it. I mean, Samson's wasn't in the same condition as the Olympia, but he was having some midsection control issues in certain poses, and he lost the Arnold to Derick. Do I think even if his midsection had been in check, he would have beat that version of Derick? No. But they are small things that contribute to that for sure,
Yeah. I've been training for over 15 years now, and I was too lazy to track anything training-wise for about the first 10 years because science-based training is for pussies. But I kept hitting plateaus from burnout, fatigue, joint issues, and injuries, and other factors that at the time I didn't really fully understand, realizing not everyone is built to handle the intense and same workload and injury resilience as Tom Platz and Ronnie Coleman, sad face. I wanted to speed run that shit, but the reality is dudes that have always known their body best are the ones that have been lifting for at least a decade. Shit takes a long ass time to figure out. I started tracking all my training on the Notes app on iPhone because I don't know what paper is. Until recently, I started using the RP Hypertrophy app. The RP Hypertrophy app spoon feeds you step-by-step workouts tailored towards whatever your focus is, or you can customize the workout yourself. Well-educated coaches have always cost $250 to $500 or more a month. I'm paying $500. That's like 10 bottles of testosterone. But if you're not competing or you don't have the money to spend, the app will adjust your program for you every week to maximize your long-term growth. It'll base this on your pump, how fatigued you feel, how your joints feel, and more. It takes in everything to account, none of which I took into account in college because the only accounting I did was counting how many dumpies were in my class. Look, there's a titty. If you don't believe in science-based training, you don't got to do no 3 RIR shit. You can just hoist heavy steel and track it, because we all know that the people who say that they remember their weights, sets, and reps every week are full of shit. IMO, there's a sort of middle ground where you track your progress and make sure all the variables are right in your food, sleep, gear, progressive overload, and then you go to the gym and slam those heavy PRs until your blood pressure is higher than Miley Cyrus. If you're still unsure, they've got a 30-day money-back guarantee, so if you still don't like it and it gives you a bad tan, you can get your money back. That way, when you compete at your next show, your tan doesn't cost you the first place that you so well deserve. So go to the link in the description below, or you go to rpstrength.com/Niall and use code Niall at checkout. That's rpstrength.com/Niall, code Niall at checkout. Another thing you guys talked about on Bro Chat too. I don't know. I just when I watched it,
fresh in your mind.
Since we were just talking about the shows, right after the show, I think it was you and Akeem saying that like you guys wish that you took more time after the show, after the show. Mm-hmm. And I guess I was curious what your perspective is on rebounds then. You know, like taking advantage of that like very extremely insulin sensitive period when you're just absorbing all those nutrients.
Yeah, I mean, look, to some regard, I think it's overrated. You know, I think a lot of it, it's like the insulin effect. It's like, yeah, you look really awesome when you use it, but then when you diet down, is it actually anything that's sticking? And I don't think it's the exact same, but I mean, how many guys have we seen that are like insulin blasting fucking Milos clients that look incredible in the off season, and then they come to diet down, they're the exact same size as the year prior? I think it does give you a bit of like a false perception of gain size versus like a reality. You know, your body is coming from this depleted state of water and glycogen, and you're like, you know, going to pile things in there. It's going to soak it up like crazy. But do I think that necessarily renders that much more growth? Not necessarily. But there's a difference in, I'm not saying after every single show. When I'm saying this, I'm maybe saying it more in the context of the end of the season. So like, you know, I think if you're doing a long season, you're doing say 2, 3, 4 shows, I think within those, there can be opportunities to use that period, you know, to get a bit of the rebound, and, you know, when your body is sensitive and fill out, and, you know, really get your training back to a high level and things like that. But I think doing it after every show all year, all the time, you know, especially if you want to have a long career, you know, I think when you're stretching, like, you know, I competed from 18 to 33, like, you know, every single year, basically for 15 years. You know, that's a lot to be putting on yourself to feel like you have to be at that place all the time. You know, so I think giving yourself mentally and physically that break can be very valuable for sure. You know, and I'm saying it like, you know, like in the year of 2021, when I said like I did Tampa, I did Texas, and I, you know, hit the rebound after Texas a little bit going into the Arnold, and then I go Arnold to the Olympia. Now I'm done the Olympia. All right, let's take a month and fucking chill, you know? So, you know, and I think the real growth is coming in like those durations of an off season. And also, like you were speaking before, I think there's also something to be said of like continuation of anabolics over, you know, after that time. Like you've just, you know, peaked for multiple shows, you know, your body is definitely probably in the worst position it's been all year from a blood work standpoint, is like right after a season, you know, like you've done 3, 4, 5 shows and you're at the end of the year. Like, I mean, you've been hammering orals for durations over the year. I mean, it's probably the time to like give your body a little bit of break from the gas, you know, from the food, from the training, from the anabolics, just for a little bit of time. Because that real growth is coming in that off season time of like, you know, stringing actual just good months of like hard training and like progressive eating and all that kind of things, you know, with your cycle and whatever. But I don't think in a rebound, I think guys have this perception that they're gaining a lot more than they are until they go and diet it down. Then they're just in the same place that they were before, you know?
Oh, well then fuck me then. Fuck.
Look, I think it's a good time to use if it makes sense in your schedule. You know, like when you're competing as a pro, like kind of analyzing your year and your schedule is so important, you know, picking timing of shows that make sense so you can get, you know, enough time between, you know, your off season, like the end of your season and the start of the next season, to make sure that if there is some weak points you need to work on, that you actually have adequate time. And that's the time you're taking it. And then, if you do have a couple shows throughout the year, okay, whereas there's some opportunities for me to utilize that rebound, you know, picking shows that are maybe 8 weeks apart instead of 2 weeks apart, so that you can utilize, you know, 4 weeks of rebound before you come down for another 4 weeks. You know, if you want to get a little, you know, be a little bigger, fuller for the next show, whatever. I think that there is opportunities for that within the season. And look, maybe you do one show in the season, you know, maybe you're just a guy that fucking hammers 1 or 2 shows. And then, at the end of that season, you're like, okay, I've only been on drugs for 16 weeks. You know, I'm going to hit the rebound for 8 weeks after the show. Cool. But, you know, speaking for me in the context of competing all year for years on end, you know, I think there was probably more stock in, you know, I'm done the year, go enjoy time with my friends and family, come off the drugs, relax on the food for a couple, you know, give myself a mental break instead of like finishing the Olympian and then on like the fucking Sunday going to the gym. You know what I mean? Like, I don't think you need to be doing that bullshit, you know?
But bro, mentally it just sucks. After peaking for a show.
Yeah, no, look,
fucking deflate.
Yeah, I mean, I guess, I mean, you know, I think there's a happy medium. Like I I've had some good looks where I just, chilled a bit. Like after the 2020 Olympia, me, Chris, Courtney, and Melissa went to Mexico for a week, and I was just like eating whatever I want. I wasn't training. I still look good, but yeah, I mean, you obviously want to you need to take your ego out of it a little bit of like, do I want to look good all year, or do I want to be the best bodybuilder I can all year? And sometimes those are tough to weigh,
It's fucking tough.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
And seriousness though, I mean, I think the perspective that you have is I think it's a really good perspective to have towards even doing the little health phase, little health phase in reverse afterwards. Cause I guess from my personal experience, I've always done like a health phase and a reverse after, or at least some sort of thing similar to that. So this last show, I decided like, fuck it, I want to fucking try the rebound. I want to fucking build as much size as possible, because I was 20 pounds under the weight cap for classic. Yeah, 20 pounds under the weight cap for classic, which is, I'm fucking tiny.
You still got a lot of space,
Yeah, so I wanted to like take advantage of it. So I tried to hit the rebound as hard as possible. And now, like, I'm not 100% sure whether or not this is totally relative to what you're saying, though I feel like it really is. That it turned out that I kind of hit it almost too hard. And so I had some of my PTs and my active release therapists and guys tell me that I had ramped up my volume way too high, way too quick immediately after the show, which is obviously the opposite of what you guys say that you wish you did. You guys wish you took it a little bit easy off of training after the show. Yeah. So I ramped it up to the point where I was doing PTOR's SST sets, and I was doing like 6 pause reps after the last set of every exercise. And it basically, what happened was the left side of my upper torso had, I'm not sure if this is exactly an impingement or not, but there's this overcompensation where all the muscles, my chest, my front delt, my rhomboid, my lat, and these external, maybe the internal rotators are too tight or something, but basically where all of them pull so hard that for the last 8 months, I've been having this persistent pain in my left side of my back, and just like this tightness where like if I lift my arm up above my head, it'll actually pop because my arm is being like fucking pulled into the socket too hard. And so I've been just trying to get body work consistently to try to relieve it. But like every time I go back to training and I train hard again, it comes back just like that.
Yeah. I mean, look, I give you at least somewhat of the benefit of the doubt of that could have happened anyways. If you're doing that kind of training and putting that much stress and that much volume and that load on yourself, I mean, the odds of things happening are high. I mean, for sure. So whether that was done to rebound state, right after a show or not, I mean, it could be negligible that was actually the case. It could have just been from that ramp up in training that could have happened in the middle of an off season, 6 months after your rebound phase. So it's tough to say, but I mean, obviously your body's in a little more delicate, susceptible point when it's right after a show. If you're not perfectly hydrated right after, and like when you're kind of building back up into things, or like you're coming from a long year where your body is a little beat up, and then you kind of add more stress onto that. Look, I do think these can be valuable times, but I think they need to be valuable times that are picked well, but like for you were saying you'd never done one. You'd done health phases, every year after and blah, blah, blah. Yeah, I probably would have tried and hit the rebound too. I mean, I wouldn't have done anything differently,
Yeah. Okay, cool. Makes me feel a little bit better.
Yeah. No, I mean, look, I've hit the rebound after many shows before in my life. I'm just saying, out of doing 35 shows, I hit the rebound for almost all of them, in some regard, where I'm wishing that I had just taken a bit of time, especially at the end of a season, more to just mentally and physically decompress. Like, look, I walked away from my career basically injury free. I've never torn a muscle. I've never had any injuries that have put me out for a season or any duration in my bodybuilding career. So it wasn't like, oh, I wish I'd done it because my body fell apart on me. But like I said, one of the things that I did retire from was like mental exhaustion of like all the time, that being my life 24/7, 365, where I think I could have mitigated that a little more by it not being 24/7, 365, because I don't think what I was gaining in having one more month of like fucking hard push after a show, or 2 months after that, versus what I lost from like a mental enjoyment standpoint that probably gave me ramifications for the entire rest of the 10 months of the year. I don't think that weighed out in terms of, pros and cons. I think taking a little more time here and there, and then being excited to get back at it versus like, fuck, I'm tired now. I'm starting my off season, but I'm already fucking exhausted, Like I feel like I've been fucking slugging it all year, mentally, especially. I think it would have paid off for sure. Yeah.
Okay, cool. I think most of the audience already knows your story, to be honest.
Sure.
Without a doubt. But
yeah.
I kind of just wanted to ask anyways, partly for the few that don't know. And also I think, I've heard so much of like your story already. And like, I think there's some parts that I just never did hear. So I'm like aware of your story, meeting Melissa and her, I guess, almost essentially falling in love with bodybuilding through you.
Yeah, I would not say. Look, I'm not going to say Melissa ever fell in love with bodybuilding. Look, Melissa did it as a byproduct of like sharing, like having a shared experience with me and her brother. When I met her, I had competed before. We met in 2012, and I had already won Canadian Junior Nationals the year prior in 2011. And then I got a bad staph infection. Like I got a really bad like staph infection that I left. And then I got like kind of went septic, and it was a whole fucking slew of shitty things after that. And it's funny because you were saying it earlier, and I know people in the comments will be like, nah, it's not, blah, blah, blah. But I got it from fucking dirty towels on stage. So because this was back in 2010, 2011, they used to use cotton towels, and they'd wipe like 30 guys with the same cotton towel.
Oh my God.
Versus now they use paper towel, and they use your paper towel, you throw it out,
Yeah.
Back then they were literally using like white cotton towels and wiping like me and 15 other guys with this. So now you're on stage, you're sweating, your pores are open, and now you're getting bacteria from 30 different fucking disgusting bodybuilders on stage and putting it on each other, So what I ended up getting is I got a staph infection in my chest, and I swear on my fucking mother's life, I had never shot a needle in my chest yet at this point. I've done it, but at that point yet, I hadn't,
Gotcha. Maybe Paul wouldn't have minded though.
Yeah. So I got a fucking abscess in my chest, and I thought I just like tweaked a muscle. So I kind of left it, and then it kind of like started to leach, and fucking, I had infections everywhere, and I ended up being in the hospital for a while, and I had like an IV pick line in for months after that. It was a big fucking ordeal for sure. And then just as I started to get back into training a bit, then I broke my arm wrestling. So then at that point I was kind of like, fuck this. I'm done with bodybuilding. I'm getting this fucking one thing after the other. I'm like, this obviously isn't meant to be. And then I met Melissa shortly after breaking my arm in 2012. And when we met, I was kind of like really done with bodybuilding. I was still training. And
how old were you then?
21. Yeah.
Okay.
So I was still training and all that kind of stuff, but like I wasn't being too serious with things. Like I was eating, but I was going to the fucking bar and, trying to fucking fuck girls and shit like that. Like I wasn't being like too serious as a bodybuilder like I would become later. I'd kind of like been like, fuck this for a while. So I met Melissa.
Most of us are at 21, to be honest. As most of us are at 21.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Unless you're freaking like,
but I hadn't been like that for the years prior. Like when I was competing and winning junior nationals and things like that before, I was like as hardcore as I was when I was a top level pro, like never missed meals. I was fucking, getting to bed at the right time. I wasn't fucking drinking or anything like that. So I'd kind of like laxed up, and I'm like, you know what? I'm fucking done with bodybuilding. This isn't going to be a life for me kind of thing. And then I met Melissa, we were together for about a year, and she could tell that I was like kind of missing it a bit, So then she was like, why don't you just fucking compete? And I was like, no. And so she's the one that kind of pushed me to do it again. And then I did another show in end of 2013, and I looked really fucking good. And that kind of like spiraled me. Like I did that, and then I did like a pro qualifier and whatever. And I turned pro like within 6 months after that. And then at this same time, while I was with Melissa, obviously Chris, was her younger brother. He was in fucking high school at this point. He was in like grade 11, he was like a junior, So he was starting to like get more serious with his training. He was already training relatively seriously when I met her, even though he was young. But then obviously like, meeting an actual bodybuilder that had competed, and then kind of picking my brain, us starting to train together a bit, and, me introducing him to that bodybuilding world. Then, I coached him and got him on stage for that first show. And then Melissa, I think, kind of just like joined in to like be part of the experience,
Okay.
Like, it was, she wanted to kind of like see the trials and tribulations that like I faced and that her brother was in, kind of have something to connect with us on. And she was enjoying training at the time. Melissa's a fucking freak of nature for sure. So, she was seeing the progress, and it was all new to her. I'm sure she enjoyed it a lot. But I would never say that Melissa like loved it, in the same regard that like Chris or I did. I think it was just like I don't think she would have been someone that would have been drawn to it if Chris and I weren't doing it,
Yeah. I was trying to figure out the perfect word, to be honest, and I really did not feel like love was a good word, but I went for it.
No, I gave you the explanation though. Yeah, no.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, I feel like Chris would be really good at bodybuilding.
Yeah.
So just like reeling it back a little bit, because this is something I was personally curious about, but what is, I guess, the earliest memory that comes to your mind when you think bodybuilding, the earliest memory that you had? Because from all the podcasts that I've heard, it sounds like you've been fucking bodybuilding since the womb.
No, I did my first show when I was like, I started prepping for it when I was 18. I think I was 19 when I actually did the show. It was like just past my birthday. Would have been 19. But yeah, I mean, how I kind of got started into bodybuilding is I just been training and like, you know, I fucking like knew Ronnie Coleman, like the fucking, you know, early 2000s guys and shit like that. But I didn't like follow bodybuilding in any like serious degree. And I started working at a local supplement store in Canada, and the guys were like, yo, you're fucking jacked. Why don't you do a show? And they were the store was a sponsor for like our local show. So yeah, I remember that first show pretty well for sure. You know, like I remember for that prep, like I hired some local guy that was just like a trainer at a gym, and he kind of did my thing. But this was a guy from the 90s. So he had me like drinking like distilled water only at like 20 weeks out. And like, you know, like fucking wild shit, you know? And then I kind of was like, I don't know if I trust what this guy is doing. So then I tried doing my own thing, and I just did a completely carbless keto diet for like 14 weeks.
Holy
so
shit.
when I say carbless, like I wouldn't eat vegetables. I wouldn't eat, like if I looked at the label, even if it had like 1 gram of fucking fiber, I wouldn't eat it. So like I literally just ate like white fish and like fats. And that's all I ate literally for 3.5 months. Like I went fucking crazy. Like in my head, I was so restricted. I was probably eating 1,200 calories a day for 3 months. I was doing like 3 hours of cardio, but I got fucking peeled out of my skull. And for a first show, which most guys don't, I at least got accustomed to like the discomfort of like getting in shape. And I thought that that's what it was always going to be. And obviously I did too much that first prep. So every prep after that, when I actually had proper guidance, felt like a fucking easy to me, you know? Like I had gone so balls deep that first prep, like doing way more than I needed to do, like eating way less food, doing way more cardio. My training volume at that time was like Jay Cutler, like 50 fucking sets of workout. You know, I'm in the gym for 4 hours, like, you know, doing 5 sets of 20 exercises. Like it was ridiculous, you know? And just getting on the stairs, like on the fucking highest level I could, and just powering for like an hour, 2 hours a day. Like it was crazy. Like I'd finish the workout, go sleep in my car and like shit like that. So I thought that's what bodybuilding was, to be a good bodybuilder, which some semblances are true, but very much not in some ways. But it definitely set me up for like the level of, you know, how I was kind of known throughout my career for my conditioning, and putting like that level of discomfort to getting that, and like being hungry and like pushing things like that became like so easy for me because I started it so hard so early, you know? Right.
Yeah. I feel the same way too. Kind of happened where like my journey started where I was actually a bit obese when I was a kid. So it was a pretty messy childhood because I was like an only child to an Asian family in like Texas. So fucking so racist. Yeah. So at one point I was like 12, 13 years old, and I just started fucking like starving myself. Like I literally just decided I'm not going to eat anything. I'd like fast, and then it was terrible, bro. Like honestly, being transparent, I'd like be fucking throwing up and shit. Lost 40 pounds in like 2 months. Then I started competing like later on, and I'm like, this isn't too bad. Except that like
after what you've been through,
I still had some shows though where I had to push to 1,200, 1,100 calories during the last few weeks just to get lean enough. And I'm trying to remember.
I have a question for you.
Yeah.
Did you find once your body fat overall got lower and you maintained it at a lower spot constantly, that getting in shape became easier and easier for you? You know, because I found for me for sure, like, and look, I'm Fuad would hate me for this because he's like pro bulk fucking, you know, but I always had my best competitive seasons coming off a leaner off season. And the more I was able to maintain, like, you know, I try and grow, but I would push food to the point where my training was as optimized as it could be, like where I was progressing in strength and I was getting really, really fucking strong. But like, I wasn't putting in more food that like I was just getting fatter and not getting stronger. So like I would just find that point, especially with Patrick, we found that really well, where I would just be like eating enough that like my training was optimized and I felt comfortable in the gym. You you get to heavy enough, you're eating so much food, you're in like discomfort all the time. You're training legs, you feel like you're going to fucking puke, your lower back's pumped all the time. Like it's just a fucking miserable state to be in. So we kind of found a point that was like where my training was optimized, but my body fat composition was pretty good. And if I was pretty lean every year from like when I would stay like that, I always looked better. The years where I pushed it, I just really wanted to be fucking 305, 310, 315, whatever. It was always, especially the first 2 shows of the year, at least until I like had body fat down for like a good duration, was really fucking hard preps. But then if I started from a lean point, my preps were fucking easy,
Yeah. I feel the exact same way, which I hate saying because I'm honestly like fluid and I could fucking clean out a box of pizza if I want. But yeah, like my physique, it was always easier for me to get leaner and to basically get to my best fucking physique when I had a leaner off season. Yeah. Like the longer, so basically like the thing with me is like I always loved bodybuilding and competing, but I took this like 3-4 year hiatus off of competing and bodybuilding and honestly just actually growing and bulking period for the sake of just being shredded on social media. Off of like low-key secretly test and primo. And fucking just posting shredded videos and stuff. And obviously like that's the reason I can do this now is because I did that in the first place.
I built that platform for you.
So I can't regret it. I do hate that I feel like I'm fucking super small now, even though because I haven't like gained any size in 4 years. But because of that, though, when my first show back, it was so easy for me to get shredded. I was like, this is the easiest it's ever been. And I prepped with my partner, which I would think would be normally harder, but like it ended up being the easiest, the most fun, the most enjoyable prep I've ever had in my life. And I feel like I loved my look at the end the most, to the point where like, I think it was just the picture, but people were saying that I started looking like I was on heroin because I was so fucking deprived.
It's funny you say that though. Like I actually found when Melissa was competing as well, it was a lot easier for sure, because it's such a shared experience of like, it just became like our life became so like kind of symbiotic, and like we would get up together. We'd, know, like right now, like I go to bed at like fucking 4 o'clock in the morning. Melissa goes to bed at like 9. You know what I mean? Like we're on like such different wavelengths, which look, it's great. And we kind of have like, we don't work. So like we're obviously together 19 of those hours during the day anyways. So it's not like we're like, oh, she's going to bed and I'm staying up. It's like, we're not having time together. But like our lives are, how we operate in the day and how we kind of spend our time is definitely very different. Like she likes to go to bed early. Like I like to go to bed a bit later. And we kind of operate in different ways. I like to train later in the day. She likes to train earlier and stuff like that. But, but when we were competing, it was like, we were kind of like always on the same wavelength. Like we would go to bed earlier, get up at kind of the same time, do our cardio in the morning. We were like always have food prep together and like training at the same time. So like, it kind of puts you in this like, symbiotic relationship where you're kind of like on the same vibe, same wavelength all the time with that stuff. So I found it worked really well when we did it together. I know a lot of couples have a really hard time because they're like fighting for that energy and space and attention. But with Melissa and I, it actually worked really, really well for us. Yeah.
I feel the exact same way. Obviously there were like a few times where like, I think like this was my first time trying TREN. So I think like the TREN would like get to me just a little bit.
Fucking. This is actually your first time. You got Trensparent podcast. This is your first time.
Well, to be honest, I was I think it was a little fucking childish ego of me that I was like, I'm gonna be that guy that never fucking took TREN. I don't know, it was a good pro or something. I don't know.
Until you use it once, you're like, fuck, this is why everybody likes this shit, because it works really fucking good.
I would probably still be one of the guys that isn't going to titrate up super high. I don't know how much. I don't know. We'll see what we do with Patrick.
You honestly don't need much of it. I mean, I definitely, when I was younger, I went higher with it. Like when I was fucking 19, 20, whatever, and I was doing all my own shit, I'd do, 700 milligrams a week or something here and there, like in my preps, just trying to push it. But when I was an actual competitive pro and like actually doing good and making good progress, like those years when I was doing that, I was getting tons of side effects and didn't actually make a ton of progress, but when I kind of figured out my food and my training and kind of the sweet spot for that, I found using 350 a week was kind of like the most I ever went. With Patrick, 50 milligrams a day was kind of like the sweet spot that we hit, and that I never really changed from that. And that's kind of the spot that I always stayed with that. So, I definitely found with that more than other drugs, there is a point of like diminishing returns. Like the more I used, my physique kind of looked a bit weird. And kind of like, even though I know it's not an aromatizing compound, I kind of looked like a little puffier, like not quite as like crisp.
Dude, this is this is something that so I had this like a little bit of a debate with Fuad because we were discussing basically from our conversation with guests and his own experiences, what he thought were the differences between open and classic regarding a bodybuilder's nutrition training and PEDs. Yeah. And so I think we came, like, at first he was saying that there is about no difference. But I'm trying to remember exactly what the specifics are of the debate, but I think we came to the conclusion that like there is a small difference. And the difference, the point that I was trying to make is that, like, first off, when you have a bigger amount of muscle mass, it tends to be that you can tend to take more drugs and like there's like a higher sweet spot for you. Yeah. But when it comes to being on the stage, what I've noticed is like, like if I take more TREN, I almost feel a little less detailed and more full. Yep. But for classic specifically, especially with my physique where it's actually hard for me to get detailed, where I have to actually like deplete, hard. It's almost, I think, works against my personal genetics to push the dose that high, because then I start losing some of the detail that I kind of need. Yeah.
I always found like more than that, like the more I went, it definitely didn't make my look progressively better. Where I did notice with some compounds, like, look, if I take more master on, I found I generally look better, like to a point. I mean, like I didn't ever go like 2 grams of it where I'm like, oh my God, like, I look awesome. But like finding the spot where we're taking like 500, 700 milligrams a week of that versus like the 350 with the TREN, I definitely found I looked better with that versus with the TREN. The more I took, it definitely, I mean, obviously there's more psychological effects. Your sleep gets impacted more. You're sweating your fucking dick off so hard at night. Like your sleep quality goes down, and sleep, like for building muscle, is fucking crucial. My training I was sweating my fucking balls off in my training. I just didn't feel as good. So there's a lot of like secondary effects that I thought weren't as advantageous, and my look didn't look as good. When I found this spot, it's like, okay, you got enough in there that you're getting the hardening effect, you're getting the strength and a bit of aggression towards your training. But then using some of the other compounds to really like perfect and kind of crisp up the look, along with obviously your nutrition and training and all that shit, right? Yeah.
I also just had a podcast with Daniel Fabode, who I think you guys may have met maybe at the show, but he got 3rd in classic at Detroit. Yeah. He was discussing about how like TREN, like it's a progestin, and if you're like not lean enough, and you keep taking higher and higher doses, it almost like makes your skin like thicker in a way. Yeah. And, I thought that was a really cool explanation, aside from the whole, like, the higher you run it, maybe the more mental side effects and less sleep that you get, which obviously is going to increase your cortisol. Yeah. And, you want to block your cortisol with TREN, but like, obviously you'll get some like dudes in like the comments of the actual reels that like are like bodybuilding bros and think like TREN is the god's juice,
No, like, look, I think TREN, like, I think TREN is a good, valuable compound. But I also think that it's one of those ones I definitely found that more wasn't better, that like, find that like, anywhere between 150, 400 milligrams at the very outset, is really all you need to like really optimize that drug and that look, and it depends. I mean, like I found some like real good parabolin amps when I was young that like I was taking like fucking 140, like 2 amps a week, like they're 76 milligrams, so 152 milligrams a week of that I was taking. And I looked fucking incredible. So like for that, like I was like, okay, this is great. I only took 2 of these a week and I looked awesome. But with some of this fucking lab TREN shit, who knows how much is actually in there. So, the 350 is kind of the sweet spot that I found. And more, I definitely didn't find enhanced my look anymore for sure. Yeah. Yeah.
Unless it's Halo test, and then it's always better.
Yeah. Halo just fucking 100, 200, who down.
I don't know why, dude. I'm one of those guys. I don't really feel anything on Halo. I just like it.
Yeah. Nice. I definitely felt it, putting it in like the last 4 weeks, especially if food is getting lower, for one, keeping your training at a high level, I think is super important. I think that's the biggest thing for me is like, because my physique was so contingent on like training being at a high level, that's really what I kind of built as the foundation of everything. Like, finding with food, with drugs, with the amount of cardio I was doing, whatever I could do to like make my training retain at the highest level possible was always going to render the best look for me. Like, look, I know a lot of guys don't build their physiques from really hard training. That's just like, they're genetically gifted and that's not an important thing, where other factors could be more heavily weighted in that equation. But for me, I found really, whatever thing. So like, when the energy starts to get a bit lower, something like the Halo like that, putting in, definitely gave me like a little bit of an extra boost. And, it has that kind of volumizing effect and things like that as well. Hardening, whatever, I don't fucking, whatever people feel they experience from it. But just keeping my training at a high level so I could keep training as hard as I was, which is then expelling more calories, which then helps me get leaner, Right. Like once my training starts to suffer and feel like I can't push it as hard or as long or whatever, then obviously the amount of calories I'm burning in a day was mitigated, right? So that is where I found on the second end from the TREN or the Halo, that's where I was getting the most benefits, just keeping my training high,
Yeah. In terms of the like not feeling so much, what I mean is like I relate more to that about what you said. It's like by not feeling so much, it's like where I do feel like the effects of TREN after like say 6-week period or something. I start feeling like a little bit irritated and like my thoughts are starting to be like, like I'll fucking get out of this car and fucking punch someone's windshield.
It's funny you say this car because that's the one place I experience it. I'm a very like not aggressive person. Like I'm not like someone that like fucking gets mad very easily. I'm very like even keel, like low aggression. But in a fucking car, when you're like TREN or haloed out, if someone does something that normally you'd be like, fuck this guy and like move on for it in 30 seconds. I'm like road rage, like chasing this guy down, fucking tailgating him. I'm like, I'm going to fucking kill you, That's the only place I would experience it is in the fucking car,
Yeah.
So I'm glad I didn't have a motorcycle when I was fucking bodybuilding, for God's sake. I'd be fucking dead 10 times over,
Yeah. But yeah, I guess Halo is the one thing where like I haven't felt the negative mental effects yet. Yeah. At least, So I don't know. Maybe it's just our chemistry is weird. Everything's always different.
For sure. Yeah.
Fucking brain farting. Whatever. Anyways, if you don't mind me asking, when did you give up your natty card?
I never competed naturally. The first show I did, I ran 400 milligrams of Sustanon and 50 milligrams of Winstrol, I think, is what I did for my first show when I was 19. I'd done ones. What?
Light work.
Yeah, light work. That was like my third cycle or second cycle. So I think I'd done one the summer at the beginning of the summer. And then that kind of led into the prep, when I started working at the store in that year, and then they kind of said to do the show. And then I kind of went one bulk into that prep. So yeah, my first cycle, I think, was just the 400 milligrams of Sustanon, the test. And then I guess the second one, then I would have went into the prep and I added the Winstrol in for that. Yeah. I might've used Clen. But yeah, those are the only two anabolics I used at first. And then I kind of like, grew from there in my anabolic adventures,
Okay. Your anabolic adventures. Yeah. Do you ever feel like, there was a point where you were like, I don't even know what I'm asking, to be honest. Like the thing that comes to my head is like, when I did this last pro show, like I kept having this thing in my head where I was like, bro, I've never done big doses.
Yeah.
I've never done big doses. Like this is my chance. Like I got this in the bag, I got a little like edge, a little advantage.
Yeah.
And then I did the big doses and I gotta be real. Like I don't feel like my physique got that much better. It got better for sure.
It will. But I mean, there's always like a weight of that, like how much are you gaining versus how much like ramifications are you getting yourself, right?
Yeah. I felt like I started hitting that kind of like, the opposite of a minimum effective dose, like maximum effective dose.
Yeah. I mean, I was a lot more like most guys, especially from my generation I was a lot more aggressive with the drugs when I was young. Like when I didn't know what I was doing, when, the information I was getting was like from, fucking these internet forums of like saying this is what Ronnie Coleman used. And they're like written by some guy that has never actually seen a cycle, like those Chad Nichols cycles that get cycled, those where it's like 7,000 drugs. And like, look, maybe these are real. I don't know. But like, that was like what my basis was back in those days, like finding stuff on the fucking deep web of like fucking nonsense. Like, there wasn't social media yet then. There was no Instagram. There wasn't really any coaches on Facebook. It was kind of like finding what you could on the internet, and then putting your best, opinion, like best practices of what you thought would render the best results. So I was definitely a lot more aggressive when I was young. I was never like too crazy. I mean, I know guys have done a lot crazier things than me. But as I got older, I really I found kind of like a sweet spot for things that honestly for a lot of my career remained unchanged. Like I kind of found, for an off season and for a prep, I had like a 10-year duration where it kind of just stayed the same. Like in a prep, I would do 100 milligrams of test prop every day, 700 a week. I would do 500 milligrams of Masteron, or I'd do 75 a day, so 525, and I'd do 350 TREN. And that was kind of like the base that I did every show for as long as I can remember, the last like 8, 7, 6, whatever years of my career was kind of the exact same, of like my injectable base there, but when I was younger, I mean, I was like, trying to do test suspension and fucking like, you know what I mean? It's like, I was just doing like all the fucking random things that I read on the internet were like the good things to do. But it didn't lead to me necessarily having a better physique. And I know people listening to this might be like, well, yeah, you built your physique when you were young like that. And then you were able to relax on the drugs as you get older. And that's actually not the case. My physique, if you look at my career, was very progressive. And it actually, until a point of when I learned how to train, like it was kind of like, I was kind of getting a little better every year, not really that much. Like, some years I was actually worse than the year before, maybe get a little better. My placings were kind of here and there, until one, I got good coaching, and two, like I actually learned how to train well, like train hard and eat properly and like things like that. Where when you're younger, you think that the drugs are the answer and the other things are like the secondary factors. When you get actually to a level, then you realize like, yeah, no, the drugs are the secondary factor. You kind of just find like a baseline, it works, it puts you in this anabolic state, whatever, blah, blah, blah. And they're good to render a look, but they're like the kind of the secondary, like icing on the cake behind, especially in my opinion, the training. Like for me, I think that training is like the end all be all in terms of what drives progress. And then obviously nutrition, but I don't think nutrition is as complicated as people think. I think it's just like, get yourself in some kind of surplus where your training is optimized, like I said, and then just, trying to get fucking stronger, just progressing in your lifts. And if your training is progressing, generally you're going to get bigger. Like obviously, you could go powerlift if you're training super, super low volume. Maybe you'll get stronger to some degree without a ton of hypertrophy. But if you're training within like the guise of a bodybuilder and you're eating enough food, doesn't need to be crazy amounts of surplus. Putting a 5,000 calorie surplus isn't going to serve you any more purpose. And then just having enough anabolics in there that it can support the training and support, using all that food that you're, taking, your protein synthesis is upticked a little bit, and then just training as hard as you can, just getting stronger and stronger and stronger. And that was really what I like used as my like milestone is like, okay, every year when I was getting stronger, I was getting better, and that's really when I kind of really hit my stride in like 2019, 20, 21, 22, was not the times I was using the most drugs or built off a foundation where I was already big that I kind of could relax off the drugs. It was when I just learned how to train,
Gotcha. I guess, how would you explain the differentiation between when you weren't training right versus when you were?
Yeah, I mean, it was a lot more like way more volume than I was doing. And look, I do think that there's guys that have been amazing bodybuilders with high volume training. So I'm not going to say it doesn't work, but for me, it was a lot more volume and a lot lower intensity. Like when you're young, you just don't know what you don't know. And I didn't know what like training hard felt like yet. I hadn't kind of branched out of my very small pool of like who was in my city that was bodybuilders or people that trained. So I was always the strongest and hardest training guy. So I thought I was training hard until then I kind of got to be to the pro level and I started to, meet more guys and I trained with guys that actually trained hard. Or, went with a train, like, the first couple of times, like I met Matt Jansen, I go out and train with him in Dallas and I'm like, holy fuck, there's a completely different level to this that I'm not at yet, that I wasn't training at that level of intensity or that level of effort or pushing the sets to the point that I think are really important. And that is when I really started to see the progress. So it's a feeling that like you think you're training to failure until you have someone or you kind of find the feeling of what it actually feels like. You push yourself there. To put yourself really deep into sets, like I would be stopping sets back then what I thought was to failure that I learned later in my career were like 3, 4, 5 sets from like actual failure, and I think that those ones are like, years of combining those hard training sessions is what really rendered the progress for me,
Okay. I guess how much, obviously this is going to differ per person, but for you, I guess, what was that optimal amount of volume that you've found?
Yeah, it depends on the body part, but I was kind of like more in the, 12 to at most 15 working sets in a workout, like that's kind of where I would be is like, I found the sweet spot of like, my big compound exercise, I maybe be doing two working sets on, and then my like more isolation, like less, demanding like exercises, like from a nervous system standpoint or whatever, energy demand standpoint, I would probably do 3 sets on those. So, say if I'm doing 5 exercises, 3 of them or 2 of them I'm doing 2 sets on, the other ones I'm doing 3 sets on. So yeah, and that 12 to 15 sets is kind of where I really landed and maintained for most of like my best years of bodybuilding.
Okay. When you say like 5 sets, I guess, like how many muscle groups per, like in the workout would you be hitting? Like,
1.
Would this be like one, like,
sorry, when I was younger. Well, yeah, when I was older and I was doing like the 15, that would probably be between 2 body parts. Like I was doing like some kind of bro split variation, like a chest and tries, but then it got more specific as I, had to improve things in my physique. Like there was a lot of periods, when I was working with Patrick, where I'd be training chest twice in a week and back twice in the week, and certain things were getting kind of put more on the back burner because they didn't need as much attention. So, like I'd be doing like a chest and tries, and on the back of the week, I'd be doing like chest and shoulders, or I'd be doing quads by itself with maybe a bit of arms. And then I'd be doing back again with my hamstrings, So like those things were getting hit twice. So it was some kind of modified bro split, push, pull legs, whatever, kind of in the middle there. But yeah, so like, it would be 12 to 15 working sets in a total workout. Yeah.
Okay. That's cool.
But then when I was younger, I would go do like a chest day by itself and do 30 working sets, like, like I would do 6 exercises and do 5 sets of every single exercise, but like, all this, and I was also doing it the other way, which guys could disagree with me on this, but this is just my opinion. I used to do it the way where I would progress up to a working set, but every set within it would still be like kind of a hard set. So it's like I would do like, 15 reps, 12 reps, whatever, and kind of work up. And then my last set would be like my heaviest one. Right. But like at that point, in my opinion, you've expelled so much energy on sub-maximal sets. So like how I ended up doing it later in my career, like, a lot of guys do now with the lower ish volume. I'm not as low as some guys are. I would say I'm like more of like a moderate, but was kind of like doing my very, very minimal warm-up sets, 2 reps, 3 reps, whatever, just kind of working up. And then my top set, my first working set would be with the maximal amount of weight I could do for the maximal amount of reps within a range. Obviously I wasn't trying to do 20 rep sets of fucking, chest presses or anything. I don't think that's advantageous as much. But working up to, like the heaviest 8 or 10 that I could work up to, and doing that as my first set when I'm the most fresh, then doing 1 back off set and then moving on,
Gotcha. Yeah. I feel like we had a kind of surprising amount of like somewhat similar experiences, but I feel like we had a pretty similar experience here in regards to training. Yeah. Like right now I would say I do about 12 to 16. Like I would do maybe like 6 to 8, maybe more like 8 sets per like specific muscle group. And then, I do maybe like 2 muscle groups per workout. So that ended up being like 16 or something total.
Yeah. So I'd be about the same.
I think it's hilarious when some people, I feel like layman people get a little bit confused when certain bodybuilders will say how many sets. I saw this freaking reel like yesterday of Lee talking about how many sets you do for arms. And like, this is why you like grew. He'd be like, yeah, I do 20 sets for arms. Yeah. But then you'd have the comments like, people are like, dude, he's a fucking liar. Like 20 sets for an exercise, or like, I'm like, these kids are imagining that he's doing 20 sets of a bicep curl, and then probably 20 sets of like a tricep. I'm sure he means per arm workout. Yeah, and it's also different because like the sets aren't quite the same. And they're like I said, I think a lot of what we would now count as kind of like warm up progressive sets were being counted as warm up sets or counting as working sets, like Fuad would. Like when he was training, like he would say he was doing 4 sets in an exercise, but like 2 of those or 3 of those even would be kind of like sub-maximal warm-up sets where he could like still do sets. Yeah, where he could have done as many reps with 30 more pounds than he was doing in the preset. So it's like, it is a set and it still is volume accumulated. But in my mind, they're just not as advantageous as like getting as much done with as maximal load as possible early. And then, so like I would always put my like most demanding exercises at the beginning of the workout when I'm the freshest and try and get the most amount of load with good form for as many reps as possible within the range. And then kind of like going to, less demanding exercises throughout my workout. Right. Mm-hmm. Yeah. I think that makes the most sense. When I first started off too, I think I was like was kind of a cunt of a kid when I was in college, like back in Purdue. And I have some of my audience that's from Purdue that have heard of me and stuff, so they're probably gonna fucking laugh at this shit. But like in Purdue is when I started social media. So there's one point where like I was looking at fraternity, right? So you got like a hierarchy when you're in college, so you kind of care about your status and shit, which I think is fucking gay. But that was me, and probably still is. But I was like, at one point I was just like, man, I want to like grow and I want to build myself and I want to become better and I want to show that, you know? So I started documenting my bodybuilding journey in college. And at one point it kind of hit off a little bit. There was like this one really homo picture that I took that just got like thousands and thousands of views, and it got me to like 10K followers.
Can we edit to cut in this photo right now or what? Pan to photo.
But like, I guess I started making a name for myself, and then there was this point where like people knew my name or knew of me whenever I'd go to the gym.
Sure.
So then my workouts ended up consisting of the amount of volume I would do would actually just match how much time, like the 3 hours I wanted to spend in the gym.
Yeah.
Because after engineering, I just want to go to the gym, and then I'd be like, I would see my homies, and then there'd be like my place where I'd like smash for like 2 scoops of pre-workout. So
it's a social event for sure. Yeah.
And then all the baddies went to the gym too. So I had to spend like 3 hours in the mirror.
Especially at college. Yeah.
Yeah, especially in college. So
one thing too, I'll say when it pertains to training is why my training was a lot more volume when I was younger too, is I was a lot more adamant on short breaks to like feel the pump. You know, I like when you're young, you're like pump obsessed, you know, it's like you want to look good, you want to feel the pump. And I use that as like an ultimate gauge for progress when I know now it's not necessarily. You know, I think it could be to some degree an important factor, but I don't think it's that important. I think that's more of like a factor that's probably relating more to your to your nutrition or your hydration or things like that, as opposed to like quality of a workout. But I would take like super short breaks between all my exercises. So then obviously the amount of load that I was able to work at like effectively and the intensity that you can bring to every set was obviously a lot less, where now I'm a huge believer in go when you're ready. Like, you know, take the time you need when you're caught your breath and you feel like you're at the maximum amount of like strength that you have to give to the next set. You know, I don't think that going super short break where it's like, oh, I'm still out of breath from the last set, or, you know, I feel like I, you know, could get another rep or two if I waited a minute longer. I think it is more advantageous to take the more time. I don't think that moving quickly is necessarily any benefit in terms of hypertrophy training. When it comes to athletic based training, I think, you know, workload and time like that is very important. But in terms of hypertrophy, I don't think it's valuable at all. I think if you're going to just be lazy and take 15 minutes to talk to your friends between sets, I think that's obviously different. But I think taking as much time as you need to be able to be at 100% for the next, as 100% as you can be, given what you've already done in the workout, is always going to be more advantageous. When I was younger, it was just like pump, move quick, like fucking, you know, like super setting things and fucking a million drop sets and like, you know what I mean? Like all that kind of stuff. Like, you know, that I don't think is necessarily driving hypertrophy as much as how I believe I trained later in my career, you know?
Right. I would feel the same way about the pump until I would be caught up talking to somebody, and then I'd talk to them for fucking 15 minutes, and then, which was my fault. And then I would lose the pump and then get mad at myself. But
yeah, I mean, the thing with the pump is like, I could go do push-ups on my floor right now and get a pump. Do I think that necessarily is building my chest? No, you know? So I think there is like, I think mechanical tension is the prime driver for building muscle. And I think if you're sacrificing creating mechanical tension in the sake of a pump, you're probably leaving progress at the door, you know?
Like doing the rest a little bit too short.
Yeah, if you're going too fast or working at like lighter loads, you know, to move a little quicker and just like squeezing and feeling and trying to pump things versus like, you know, obviously you want to feel an exercise to a degree, but I do think feeling is overrated to a large degree. But I think, you know, taking the time to be adequately prepared for the next set, and even if your pump doesn't feel as good, I think it's still more advantageous, you know?
How many minutes does it tend to be for you personally? I know it probably differs per muscle group, but
yeah, I mean, obviously if I'm like doing a hard set of squats, I might take 5, 6, 7 minutes between a set for sure. You know, I mean, fuck, that's exhausting. You know, if you're doing a hard set of barbell squats or, you know, hack squats or something like that, or deadlifts or like something like that, that's like a really heavy load that's like put on your back or whatever, that's like really exhausting. I could take a long time for sure. I mean, it depends. Yeah. 5 minutes plus. Obviously if it's a set of fucking, you know, rope extensions, like I don't think you need that long. You know, I think you'll probably be recovered in a minute to 90 seconds between those. So yeah, it depends on the muscle group, but rule of thumb is 1, have you caught your breath? And 2, like, do you feel that you're mentally ready to like give everything to the next set? And if you're like, fuck, I need another minute, take it, you know?
Okay. That's actually honestly just something that I've learned recently, even though I've like heard of this for a long time. Cause I used to follow people like Dr. Mike, like fucking back in college before he actually got, he got famous. But, I mean, to be honest, for some reason, only recently did I start implementing the I guess the concept of waiting until your heart rate goes back down to like a reasonable level. Yeah. Which is a problem because sometimes I'm in the gym for a long time and I like to superset and then my heart rate just stays up. Yeah. I guess because right now I've been setting like 2 to 3 minute timers depending on what the exercise is. When it's leg press, I can't fucking do 3 minutes. It has to be like 3 to 4 minutes normally. Yeah. But I guess, when do you feel like there is a place for the pump?
Like I said, I don't think you should ever be chasing the pump. Like I think you should be getting a pump. And if you're not, then I would explore more things from like a nutrition and a hydration standpoint or like volume standpoint or things like that. If you're doing too much volume, by the end of the workout, you're probably going to be losing your pump. So I think trying to chase it forever, I think could be, not advantageous. So maybe you're doing too much. But I also think most of the time, if your nutrition is in a good point and you're like adequately fueled, and if your hydration is good and your sodium intake is adequate, sodium is like crazy important for getting pumps in the gym. Like if someone wants to just enhance their pump in a pre-workout, just add like 2 grams of salt to your pre-workout and you'll definitely get a better pump. So, I think if I'm not getting good pumps, I think it needs to be explored more from like a nutrition and hydration standpoint than it would be like, I need to move faster in my workout or like anything like that. I think if you're moving heavy weight and you're contracting the muscle, you're going to get blood in there no matter what. So I don't usually ever look at it now as like a primary or important factor in my training by any large degree,
Okay. How did you feel about PTOR's SST sets?
It's honestly been so long, I don't really remember what the SST sets even are. So maybe give me a refresher on it so I can remind myself.
Yeah. So he had like, I think it's 5 options, but I don't remember distinctively all 5 because I just picked like my 2 favorites. My 2 favorites are there's like, you do right after you do your last set to failure, you do your last set of the exercise of each exercise to failure. You do 20-second rest and then.
So it's a rest pause set.
Yeah, that one's a rest pause set. So you do 20 seconds rest and then you hit it again to failure and you keep doing it until you only have 1 rep left in the tank. And then one of the other ones is like, it's actually a 45-second, then you hit it, 30-second, then you hit it, 15-second, then you hit it. And then another option is like, you actually just do a drop set where you drop it to like 66% of the weight it was before. Yeah, see,
I'm definitely more in favor of something like a rest pause than I am a drop set because you're working at the same maximal load the whole time. So like with a drop set, you're lowering the load and reducing the mechanical tension, where I would think in my mind, getting maybe less reps with a higher load, taking that, 15, 20-second break, then, stay with that same load, getting a couple extra reps, then you're just bringing that a little deeper till failure, but still using that heavy load that we were using on that set. So I like those. I did rest pauses a lot. How much do they serve in the total benefit of hypertrophy? I have no idea. But I definitely do like them as like an intensifier and like, really feeling like you're getting like a good hard training session in. They're definitely like a good one for that. But I did lots of rest pauses and Jansen worked with those a lot too when I worked with him. So yeah, I definitely did a lot of those in my life for sure.
I like to feel like that's one of the European secrets.
Yeah.
I don't know. I just see like the fullness of Stephane's physique and I'm like, it's those rest pause sets, isn't it?
Yeah. No, I mean, I think the biggest thing is just how close and how deep into failure you're bringing them. I think if you have learned to bring your basic working sets that deep, I think it can be almost just as effective. I think for a lot of guys, it's just like it's a good way to train themselves to push sets really deep with that maximal load, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Man, there's like fucking 3 things that are crossing my brain. So I guess with, the training. So you were mentioning back when you were prepping for a show, you're like 3 weeks out of a show and stuff. You wanted to make sure that your training performance was still high because that would yield you the best physique. Was there ever a time where you guys kind of had like trouble in trying to find like this perfect amount of like managing fatigue because your training, would still be high. And I know some coaches actually like titrate down training intensity or volume.
So we would titrate down volume. Yeah. So intensity, I would always try and maintain until maybe like the last week or 10 days or something like that. I do think at that point, you want to reduce inflammation, reduce things like that in the muscle. So I don't think pushing your workouts quite as hard within the last week are generally advantageous. I think they're probably detrimental. And it also depends on how high your food is. If you're really having to push down to get into shape, But yeah, I think we would manage it from an overall workload and volume standpoint. So I would reduce the amount of total working sets in the workout, but the ones that I would still have, I would try and fucking be as heavy and as hard as I could. And then if I found I was still not able to achieve it, I would reduce it even more. So yeah, it was usually general overall workload that was reduced, but I would try and maintain the same level of effort and intensity. And obviously you're going to get drops in strength when you're prepping for a show. And a lot of that is just correlated with body weight. I mean, as weight moves weight, I mean, the lighter you get, the weaker you'll be. I mean, it's almost inevitable. So I think a lot of it is just that, but a lot of it is pertaining to food and, energy balance and demand. I mean, especially if you're doing a lot of cardio, I mean, there's energy expenditure there. So, I mean, like there's a lot of things that are co-factors in that, but, for us, especially with Patrick, we always tried to keep, for me, my cardio as low as possible, because that would keep my training at a higher level. And I was generally able to expel a lot more calories and burn a lot more fat during my actual weight training than I ever was during my cardio,
Gotcha. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So, I mean, you and I both had to I guess, early on we learned just like how difficult it was to diet, but then I guess that kind of set a precedent for us in, future competitions. So I guess this is a discussion I've been having a little bit more often recently, and I don't know if some of the audience hates this discussion or not, but at first I had kind of a conflicted perspective on it, but I'm almost being warmed into the idea. It's still a little difficult, but I guess what's your thought on the fact that GLP-1s are now being used pretty commonly in bodybuilding preps?
Yeah, look, I don't have a massive opinion on it because I've never used them myself and I've never implemented them in the days when I was coaching. So I don't have enough experience utilizing them. It's tough because I do see the benefits. I do see from an appetite suppression and blood glucose management standpoint, I do see where they do have a benefit. But I'm also, like I said, I'm a huge proponent on maximizing your training. And I think a lot of people, when they introduce these kind of things, do get a bit of suffrage in their training, their output and their intensity, but I think if you're able to get in your adequate protein, your training is staying relatively stable and it's helping just curb your appetite a little bit and keep blood glucose in a good spot. I don't see a huge issue to it. I mean, out of all the compounds we're using as bodybuilders, is probably one of the safer ones you're going to be utilizing. So, I'm not opposed to it in any way. I mean, if it was that versus DNP, I'm fucking taking Ozempic all day, if this is the coin I'm fucking hoping I'm flipping onto the GLP-1 side,
Yeah. I think there's some kind of I think there's a very good argument to be said for microdosing it, or at least below initial dosing protocols, especially, as a bodybuilder and when you're eating that much protein and shit and you're trying to manage your gut.
Yeah.
So, from what I've seen, that's the benefits seem to weigh into the whole microdosing thing. I do know though, it is a lot of hard. It's I've seen it be pretty hard for people to kind of figure out a good dosing place. Cause it's it's so weird the way that the dosing is. It's if you go, I don't know. I mean, this might just, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe people have all different experiences, but when you just go a little bit below the dosing, sometimes how much you feel is drastically different. If you go too high, which is very easy with how small those
the dosing
units are, you can just suddenly feel nauseous and you can't even eat the protein that you need to.
And that can be tough. So like I said before, as long as you're able to get all the food that you do need in, if you're not crashing your appetite to the point where even getting what you need to fuel your training and actually be in the right spot from a nutrition standpoint is still able to be done. I do think it can be a valuable tool for guys, especially guys that have a really hard time with cheating on their diet and appetite control and things like that during a prep. If you're just fucking really, really struggling with that, do I think it can be a tool to implement? Sure. Do I think it was something I would have used? No, but I didn't have problems. I'm not a big eater to begin with. So being hungry to me was almost a fucking sense of relief, I was eating so much throughout the rest of the year. There would only be maybe 6 weeks out of the year, 4 weeks, 3 weeks before a show, 2, whatever it was, that I would really be actually pretty hungry. And at that point I welcomed it, I was fuck, it feels nice to be excited to eat my next meal and be hungry and wake up in the morning. For me now, I'm never a big morning eating guy. So wake up in the morning, excited to eat and want to do your cardio, go get your food in as fast as possible. I actually love that. So like, but I know a lot of guys like fucking hate being hungry and they have a really hard time with it. And I know this is like I don't know if genetic is the right word, but you know, how people's like release leptin and ghrelin and how it affects them like mentally, I know is very different person to person.
Yeah. It is definitely genetic variant.
Yeah. So for me, it was like not a very hard thing at all. But I think if you are someone that struggles with that, then I do think it could be a tool that, you know, at the right dosing on the lower end, I think could be something you could implement and use effectively for sure.
Cool. If you feel like any of the medications that we spoke about today may benefit you, such as BPC 157, GH secretagogues such as Tesamorelin, IGF1, oxandrolone troche, semaglutide, then you can obtain these from Trensparent HRT, and the link for that will be in the bio. If you feel like you're experiencing symptoms of low testosterone, such as depression, anxiety, lack of motivation, as well as lack of sex drive, then you can get this checked out as well by getting your blood work done at Transcend, and they will provide you expert medical analysis. Transcend HRT has worked with many professional bodybuilders and pro athletes, such as Thor Bjornsson, Phil Heath, and Jeremy Buendia. And if you feel like this podcast has any relevancy to you, I do believe that this clinic will provide of great benefit to you as well. Chris Williamson talks about having a podcaster bladder, and I just don't have that. I can't imagine doing like a 2-hour live show or something.
I have like a camel bladder, man. I can do like 8-hour drives and not stop to piss once. You know?
That's crazy.
Yeah.
How much, how much water are you drinking?
I mean, I don't measure my water, but I mean, I probably drink like 5 liters a day. I mean, like I'm not like crazy, but I drink enough for sure. Yeah.
Damn, that's crazy. Yeah. I almost wonder if I should I take astragalus fruit, and I've noticed that, you know, some credible people I've discussed this with, I've talked about like, you know, the benefits of continuously titrating up above 2 grams. Like you can continuously increase the dose fine and it'll just continue to benefit you. But like, bro, I do 2 grams in a full day and I'm peeing 5 times throughout the day. And I do it in the morning. It's crazy.
Yeah. I definitely pee a lot less now that I'm not using any anabolics. Like when I definitely found I pissed a lot more. Okay. I don't know if there's any correlation there, if it's just maybe I'm not eating as much, so I don't drink as much water. So I'm not sure, but yeah, I definitely notice I piss a lot less. Like same at night, like I can sleep basically a full night now and not wake up to piss, which was like obviously impossible when I was competing. I was getting up like 2-3 times a night to fucking piss, you know?
Okay. Interesting. Yeah. This juice to piss ratio ought to be studied. Yeah. All right. 1 million questions.
Cool.
Oof. Wow. I'm gonna pick one of my favorites actually real quick.
Okay.
Because I'm gonna get this done at the exact same place in December. But Kenny1 asks, how painful was the hair transplant? Would you do it again?
It's not that bad. I mean, look, it's a long procedure and only about like 1-2 minutes of it is painful. You know, when they give you the local anesthetic, you know, they fucking shove some pretty nasty needles in your head, which in your scalp, like you think of how tight that skin is, like it's definitely not nice. And they go in like horizontally. So say this is your scalp, they go in like this way, you know, they're not like going like this.
Oh,
like they're going, so they go,
maybe I shouldn't have known that.
So they go in like long, like with a long needle going sideways and like put a bit of, they'll go like this. They put a bit of numbing, draw back, put a bit of numbing, draw back, put a bit of numbing, pull it out. And they go in another spot, numb, pull it out. And then until they get your head, and then they do the front. Well, they do the back first to numb it, to get like all the donor hairs out of the back of your head. And then they take out hairs for a few hours, whatever. And then when they flip you over and start transplanting, then they numb your head again at the top. So you do that twice where they do the numbing, which is certainly not pleasant. But it's a short period. So, I mean, like it's 2 minutes of like 8 out of 10 pain. And then you just lay there with a fucking completely numb head for, you know, hours on end. But it's not that bad, man. I mean, like, you know, my mom's husband just went recently, you know, we went back last year. And he did his, and like he was like, it was fine, you know, and like he's not like, you know, he's not like fucking super macho man that's like nothing hurts me. Like if it had hurt him, he would have told me, you know. And he was like, no, it wasn't that bad, you know. Damn. So yeah, I mean, it's not pleasant, but it's short, and then you literally just lay there with a fucking numb head for 5 to 8 hours. You know,
okay,
it's long, yeah. But no, I mean, would I do it again? Yeah, I mean, if I need it, I'll probably will do another one at some point. But no, I mean, it's not like the worst thing ever. I mean, it's worth it for sure. Yeah.
Okay. Cool.
Yeah.
Can I demand like a ketamine infusion or something?
No, but just like pop like a fucking, you know, quarter bar of Xanax or something. You'll be all right, you know?
Yeah. I'm really excited for it because I think I used to be somewhat known for my hair, and now I just look like I have pews on my forehead because of the gear. Fuck.
Yeah, no, mine came in really well, but I still want more on the back. Like the back, like in the crown area, is definitely a harder area for them to transplant because the scalp is a little thinner and blood flow there is not as good as it is like in the temple, like forehead area. So you get like usually like a 70-80% success rate on grafts done at the front, versus you get like a 30-40 at the back. So I definitely want to put more in the back at some point, but I'll wait till I've like thinned out on top a bit, and they can kind of just go do the whole top. So yeah, I mean, I'll probably go back at some point. I mean, but I built a pretty good relationship with the guys there. Like I went down last year, just went fucking dirt biking with Malik, like the owner. Like I just like hung out.
Shit.
Like, yeah, like I went on vacation there. Me and Melissa went down with my mom and her husband. And you know, he got his hair done. I just like, you know, Malik and his like people like put us on vacation. They like arranged a full vacation for us there. And we went and explored Turkey. I went dirt biking with him and his like couple of his buddies and shit. It was a good time. So
that's tight.
Turkey's awesome. I like Turkey a lot. It gets kind of like, I think people think of it as like this fucking Middle Eastern country where like women got to fucking cover up and it's like kind of scary. It's like, it's not like that at all. Maybe if you go super far Eastern Turkey, we're getting closer to Iran. But like Istanbul is fucking like Europe, man. It's like Europe with some Muslims. Like it's not like, it's a very nice, safe country that like is really beautiful. And honestly, I really like going there. Yeah.
Okay, cool.
Yeah. You'll like it.
Yoseba, back again.
Fucking Yoseba. I fucking know this guy.
Yoseba says, never have sex again or never train again.
Never train again. Yeah.
Never train again.
Well, I mean, okay, maybe I would say, oh, fuck. So I can do anything else but have sex? Like, can I still get blowjobs and like fucking go down on my wife and like other things? Or is like, if we're talking just no penetration, then I might take that over training. But like me and my wife still want to have kids. So I guess if I just went IVF route, then I wouldn't technically have to have sex to have a kid. I don't know. That's tough. I probably would be a very miserable human that would end up divorced if I stopped training. So, so I probably have to keep the training in or I won't have a wife to fuck anyways, you know?
Yeah. I have a feeling like if it was just penetration, then I think I would say never have penetrative sex again.
I would say that
it's all
too.
sex.
Yeah. So then yeah, I probably got to say no training, but that sucks. Yeah.
Damn, that's crazy.
I mean, fuck, man, I'm only 35, 34. Yeah. Like if I got another, 40, 50 years in me of no sex, that's going to be a rough time, you know?
Yeah. I would probably have to say,
and my wife would also divorce me for that if I never fucked her again. So, she's leaving me if I become a miserable fuck from not training or for not fucking her. So, I mean, either way, I'm getting the shit under the stick here, you know?
I'd probably have to say, never have sex again.
Yeah.
It's not like I'm having sex anyways. I'm just kidding, Lexi. She's probably gonna listen to this. She's probably gonna leave me. Megaton asks, well, this is a big question. This is long. He says favorite moment from each main gym you've trained at, but I mean, that's a lot of moments in a lot of gyms, I'm assuming.
Yeah, that's hard over my career to even think of.
Like
I mean,
favorite moment at a gym.
Man, that's even tough to pin down. I mean, I've fucking trained for so long with so many different people and things like that. I don't even know if I could even think of anything that stands out. Like, obviously I've had a lot of, I do remember 2020 Olympia. It was one of the years that Melissa, Chris, and I all competed at the Olympia together. And I remember being at, this was the years they were in Orlando and being at the Kissimmee Muscle Gym, like the three of us, all being in, show shape and training. And we were all there for the common goal of doing the best we could at the Olympian.
And you were still coaching Chris at this time too, right?
I was still coaching both of them for this Olympia. Yeah.
Yeah. That's fucking nuts.
So, I remember that really enjoying those times of us all kind of being together and this is 2018 Olympia we were all together. So 2018 Olympia. And we were all together and all competing. And just remember really feeling that bond among us that we were all going to be on the Olympia stage together and everything was pretty cool. That was a pretty surreal moments for sure. Yeah.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Geo asks, any misconceptions of bodybuilding that bothers you?
No, I mean, Obviously there's like the meathead stereotype, but in a lot of cases that's true. So like, I can't say that's necessarily a stereotype. A lot of bodybuilders become bodybuilders because they're fucking meatheads and they're fucking half retarded. So I don't know, nothing that like stands out. Is there anything that stands out to you, like bodybuilding misconceptions?
I don't know, man.
Maybe that they're like assholes or something. Like I know even at my local gym, there's a lot of people that I'll like meet in other arenas that will like talk to me and they're like, man, I was always too scared. You're so scary looking at the gym, like blah, blah, blah. Where like a lot of these guys, especially in a gym setting, I mean, I am anytime. I'm a very like social person. Like I like interacting with people and like, it's never a bother to me, like no matter what phase of my life I'm in, to like stop and talk to people. But because of how you look, I think a lot of people are like, think that you're something from a personality standpoint that you're probably not. And especially in a gym, like if someone came up to me and asked me a question about like how to make their training better, I'd fucking, even if I was 2 weeks out from a show, I would spend 15 minutes with them and try and help them. Like, I don't care at all,
Yeah.
Like I love to like share the knowledge of those kind of things. So yeah, that would probably be a big one for me, is like thinking that they're meaner than they are, because of how they look,
Yeah. So, okay, I got one and I think it's a little bit rare. All right. But, I think, so my girl and I were in Florida, right, for my show. And, we had this guy, we got an Uber and, this guy was just like asking us what we're doing there. And I'm just like, I'm competing at the show, I'm bodybuilding or whatever. And he's like, oh, cool. And he's like, do you do steroids? And I'm like, yeah, I do steroids. And he's like, oh, damn. It was almost like kind of demeaning. And I was just like, the fuck is this from? And then he was just like, he's like, normally guys who do steroids are like pretty big, right? Like, he's like,
my God, what a shot to your fucking nuts, eh?
He's like, and then he's like, I just want to be like, I want to stay natty like Chris Bumstead.
Oh my God.
And then out of nowhere, just like looking at each other and we're just like, wait.
Yes.
What do you mean?
6-time Mr. Olympia is the nattiest guy in the world. What are you fucking talking about? Yeah.
So I guess he's just like, I don't know, like this is so rare now, but I guess there's still people out there that believe that there's like Olympians that are natural.
Yeah.
And,
well, I think it's because they'll compare them to like, they'll compare them to like Ronnie Coleman and they'll be like, this is steroids. This is not, this is a natural, beautiful, healthy body. And this is steroids. Yeah.
It's like the ones with the big guts are the ones that are
it's like
steroids.
the big fucking disgusting freaks are the only ones that use steroids. Little do they know that like 90% of the fucking people that go to your gym are fucking taking steroids and you just can't even tell. Like, I don't think people even realize, like, until they've been in this world, like, or know people that fucking do steroids, sell steroids, been around steroids, that like everybody does steroids, like whether it's just like little kids taking some fucking Anavar, doing a bit of test or whatever it is, like fucking, doing some shit to shred down for summer or whatever. So many people use steroids. And I don't say that's like a good thing. I don't think it's a good thing. I think it's a bad thing for sure, but I think it's way, way more rampant than people think,
Yeah. Bro, like, I don't want to put this kid on blast. So it's always hard to like say these stories sometimes, but I'm like, dude, these are such good stories. But freaking, this kid I know who has reached out to me for help before. And he was natural back then. Like this was years ago. He reached back out to me again, bro. And he was like, so this guy is telling me to take this stuff, but I've been taking this. Like, what do you think about it? So basically, essentially, there's this guy who ended up being, I'm sorry, bro, if you're listening to this, I swear to God, I'm not going to say your name. I hope this is discreet enough, but there's a guy who basically became like basically an uncle figure to him, after a few years, who was a friend of his in the gym. And then, this kid wanted to like make some gains. And like, mind you, this kid is below the age of 18, right? And I've noticed this has happened pretty common. So this is kind of one of the big reasons why I wanted to create this podcast in the first place, is because I had some misconceptions too when I started.
Sure.
But, basically, this kid started jumping on stuff because this guy was like telling him like, this is the way, take Anavar and Winstrol.
Yeah.
And his dad, when he found out, he was like, well, just don't inject. Like if you're going to take gear or whatever, just don't inject. Right.
Yeah. Like that's, and obviously, like, that's somehow worse.
Like, there's misconception and miscommunication here.
Yeah.
Well, the craziest thing to me though, is that apparently he asked me, he was like, so he sent me this picture and he's like, how many IUs do you think this is? how many IUs of GH do you think this is? And he sent me a picture of a giant bag of white pills.
Oh my God.
This guy had sold him these giant bags of white pills that was supposedly a year's worth
of growth hormone,
of oral growth hormone for $10,000.
Oh no.
I know. I felt so fucking bad, dude.
Yeah, that's not a thing, guys. Sorry. Yeah.
And I'm like, dude, I have a lot, my audience is pretty damn well versed, I think. The age range is a lot. Obviously the biggest age range is 20s to is in your 20s, like 20 to 30.
Yeah.
But I think people don't really understand, America's fucking huge. There's so many people that there's still this gray area where people just don't really completely understand PEDs or bodybuilding.
Yeah. I mean, it's even a good thing you said there too. Someone said don't inject, as if orals are somehow inherently safer than injectable drugs, when I would actually probably say it's the opposite. In terms of a health ramification standpoint, when you're taking an oral that has to be processed at a higher level through the liver, is in most cases going to be worse for you. If someone's like, hey, I'm going to take testosterone, I'm going to take D-ball or Anadrol, I'm telling them to take test all day long. I mean, this is like a bioidentical hormone. I'm going to tell them to take that versus fucking, then fucking take the orals. I mean, it's definitely going to be way safer in terms of a health management standpoint,
Yeah. Yeah. So I don't know. I'm just hoping that all these podcasts that we're all having and stuff kind of help dispel some of this, old crazy,
so much shit out there,
forum shit.
Yeah. What I grew up with,
FOH08 asks, what is the reason you respond to so many people and help them on Insta? Smiley face.
Yeah, I don't really know. I enjoy it. I mean, I like helping people. I think it feels very fulfilling for me, knowing that I'll talk to a guy and help him with his training or nutrition or whatever it is. And he'll come back in a couple months and be like, man, that really fucking helped. I've made a lot of progress. He sends me his pictures and he's super proud of it. I really hate holding information hostage. I think it took me a long time to learn this stuff. And I don't think that everybody needs to go through that same. I think there's a lot of things you need to just learn on your own, but I think a lot of it is just things that we can share the wealth of information that, I've spent 15 years accruing or that other guys have. And look, I'm a professional bodybuilder, or I was. My life is not extremely busy. It's more busy now, but when I was competing, I literally just ate and sat on the couch all day. For me to answer your DMs is not a time consuming thing. And it honestly gave me a high level of fulfillment, like I said, to help people in their journey. And then, they'd make more progress sometimes because of it. And that felt good, so I like talking to people. I like helping people. And yeah, it's always been something that I've enjoyed doing. Yeah.
Hell yeah. I love all the stuff you post too.
Thank you.
All the stories and all the comments are fucking hilarious. Oscar Laduc asks, do you feel pressured competing knowing C-Bum's your brother-in-law?
No, I never felt pressure competing. I mean, obviously I probably felt some pressure from a overall career success standpoint. Because it's definitely weird having the most famous guy in the history of this industry as your brother-in-law. And seeing that evolution was definitely a little surreal for sure. So no, we compete in different divisions. So it was never, look, if he had been an open bodybuilder, then for sure I would have felt a lot more, with wanting to be a better bodybuilder than him, because I'm a very competitive person. I wanted to be better than everybody, let alone just him. So I would have felt that, that I wanted to keep my hierarchy as the big brother of the better of the two bodybuilders. But no, we compete in different divisions. So I didn't feel that pressure from a competition standpoint. I didn't feel I have to win this show or place high at the Olympia because C-Bum's my brother-in-law. I never felt that. But obviously his career is so such a crazy magnitude that, from that standpoint, I always felt some pressure, I'd say. But I don't even know if it was pressure, maybe more envy than pressure, but not pressure per se. No. Yeah.
Gotcha. Yeah. Poly fucking D asks, so what does it feel like mugging Chris?
Well, I'm definitely mugging him now for fucking, he's retired and he has his fucking shoulder all fucked up. He just got like a bunch of stem cells and crazy shit done in his shoulder. So he hadn't really been training at all for like months, like 3+ months. He hadn't really trained. So, you know, it was good because for the last year he was still competing and I was retired. So like, it was the first time in 15 years I felt like Chris was mogging me. So now at least I feel like I have that back, you know? So it's good. I mean, being the one that was the open bodybuilders the whole time, I was always like the bigger, stronger guy. And then when I retired for a while and he was still competing, I'm like, fuck, I don't like this. You know, like I feel like he's a little stronger than me, maybe not heavier than me, but like more muscular than me, because he was, you know, still obviously competing and I wasn't. But no, now that he's, you know, retired and fucking his shoulders falling apart, at least I got it back a little bit. You know?
Yeah. Joseph asks, how do you create a Chris Bumstead?
You cannot, unfortunately. Yeah, look, there's no way to create something like that. I mean, Chris is just an anomaly, you know? I mean, he's structurally almost perfect. He's like a perfect height. He's got wide clavicles. He's got small hips and small joints and, you know, everything just is put together well. Like, look, he's got some muscles like his biceps and things like that aren't the best things ever. But when you combine the whole thing, I mean, he's just very, very genetically gifted and he worked very hard, you know, trained very hard and was very consistent for a long time. And yeah, I mean, the thing is like the unfortunate reality is just not all men are created equally, you know, like no matter how hard you train, you're never going to run as fast as Usain Bolt. No matter how hard you know, do a million things, you're not going to be 7 feet tall and be able to play in the NBA. Like there's just things that you're born with. And Chris was just born to be a good bodybuilder. And that's just like the end of it, you know?
Yeah. Well, I guess, to tail off of that, I guess it's a little hard of a question to ask because I'm sure there's so many things that were put into it, but, I guess, what was it like? How was it like figuring out the coaching relationship with Chris? And I guess like what were the maybe like unique circumstances that you guys had to work around, whether it was like how he responded to certain foods or how he responded to certain gear or how he responded to like timing? Because I'm assuming there was a lot of that.
Yeah, I mean, it was tough, man. I mean, look, a lot of the years I was coaching Chris, I didn't know a lot, you know, like I started coaching Chris when I was really young and I was kind of figuring this all out at the same time, you know, with him. Like I wasn't like, you know, someone that was 20 years deep into a coaching career and felt like I had all the answers. Like a lot of it was just like learning as I went. You know, I was very inexperienced. Things changed a lot kind of as we went, like things that I would have done from a nutrition standpoint or training advice I gave him at the beginning. 10 years later, I would have been like, what the fuck was I thinking telling him this? You know, like it's an evolution. And I was like, you know, a 21-year-old kid to a 31-year-old kid, 32, 33 at the end. You know, so there was like a lot of like lessons that I learned that obviously changed how I coached him, you know, whether it was just things I learned on my own or with working with different coaches, you know, with Matt, with Patrick, with Dennis, with whatever, you know, things I learned along the way. But, you know, obviously the toughest period was, you know, Chris had in 2017, 18 kind of expressed itself like he has like an autoimmune disease that affects his kidneys. Like he has an IgA neuropathy that came out in, I guess, beginning of 2017, 16, 17. Yeah, 17. So, you know, that was obviously very stressful and tough and, you know, to manage, you know, one from just a personal relationship standpoint of me being like, fuck, I really don't want to put my family in harm here. So like, there was obviously like a mental dilemma of like, what do I do to, you know, help this guy bodybuild, but like not make anything worse? And there was a period in there where I was honestly like, I don't know if I should coach him because I don't like, if something bad happens, like I don't want that happening like with me as his family and like having to live with that, you know, selfishly, you know, obviously this time I don't want to hurt him because I love him and he's my family, but also like, if I do something that then like, you know, ends up hurting him because we're trying to be good bodybuilders. Now I'm like living the rest of my life with his family and you know what I mean? Or with him or whatever it is and whatever ramifications come from that. Like, I don't want that fucking, you know, that on my mind, on my conscience, on my hands, whatever. So there was a time that I was, you know, earlier before we did end up splitting up that I was really weighing of like, if I wanted to help him when those issues came out, but I kind of like came to the realization of like, I would rather him be doing it with me than anybody else because like, I feel like I have his well-being, as a higher concern because of the personal relationship, not the other way around. But no, it was definitely hard. I mean, and there was times like near the end too, that were really hard on a personal relationship. I mean, we had some bad years where we were like definitely not friends, where it was tough because I was trying to compete at the Olympia. I was still coaching him. Time management becomes very difficult of like, who gets more energy and time here? Like, to compete at the Olympia and in the open, our schedule is completely different than classic. We're competing on the Friday night. He's competing early Saturday. And there became a point where I really had to like weigh the, do I want to give my best shot at being the best bodybuilder and being at my best for this Olympia, or do I want to give that to Chris? And my first Olympia in 2018, it went more to Chris. Like I was just happy to be there, my first one, and I was coming 14th and whatever. But then when I started to realize like, hey, I can be shooting for first call outs and I'm like, actually being competitive here. Well, then I started to want to put that time and energy towards myself. And he definitely got on the back burner of that. And that's kind of why we ended up, making the, combined conscious decision to be like, hey, maybe we should find someone else that can come in here that can be like a full time for this. Because when I'm trying to compete here at the Olympia, like I can't give you all this time and energy that you need to be the best bodybuilder that you can be.
Yeah.
And like the 2021 Olympia, like, I was getting off stage and going to bed late and he's getting up at 5 o'clock in the morning to get his tan on. I've been asleep for 2 hours. Like, I don't want to get up and look at his progress photos. Like I need to sleep for fucking 8 hours to like look my best for the Saturday night finals, Yeah. So like it became things like that, were obviously hard because he needs me there and he wants me to look at him and, be there to support him and like help him from a coaching standpoint and even just like a support standpoint, not be like left out to dry. But then I'm like, well, I also got to fucking try and place at this goddamn Olympia. Like this is my career as well, So that's where that push and pull kind of came. That was definitely hard to manage. But, I think when we kind of handed the reins off to Hani, that like definitely helped and we were able to like rebuild our relationship in a lot of ways. And it was definitely a lot better for having someone else step in. Like when I was competing, that was just too much to manage, that someone of that level and that's superpower and stardom with that much expectation while also trying to like exceed my own expectations,
I mean, dude, honestly, I can't even absorb the concept of like coaching anybody when you're stepping on the Olympia stage, much less coaching another Olympian competitor or Mr. Olympia. So I don't know. I mean, honestly, kudos to you because I think it's still fucking amazing that you were able to do any of that.
It felt so easy the first year because like I didn't care to like sacrifice a bit of my own to help him because he was already coming second at the Olympia then. Like it's 2017, he'd come second. I didn't compete in 17 at that Olympia. And then 18, we were there together. So like, I didn't care to like sacrifice a bit of my like time or energy to maybe not look 1,000%, but to have him at his best. But then, like I said, once I got to where I was actually like taking this seriously and now like, this is my career and like, I'm like making good money from sponsors and like, I've been winning a lot of shows and like, I'm like, all right, well, I'm sorry, man. But like, if someone's got to suffer here between me and you and I'm picking me, I'm sorry, Yeah. So that's why he just needed someone that could be a full-time guy just for him, or a full-time coach. I mean, obviously Hani was coaching other guys too, but his job is to be there for his athletes, like where my job needed to be there to compete,
Yeah. I guess, well, this is a question that's a curiosity of my own, but I guess, how did you guys have to work around when you found out about his autoimmune disease? Because I mean, I'm sure that's fucking difficult working around the kidneys.
Yeah, it was tough, man. I mean, at first it was very hard and we really didn't know what the fuck we were doing. I mean, it started off with obviously like significant limitations in protein and sodium and things like that to try and relieve any stress we could on his kidneys and bring his blood pressure down as much as we could and like things like that. And, a whole slew of different things we were trying from supplementation standpoint. But a lot of it I think was just induced by like overall like stress load, like his body just kind of had a freak out on his kidneys. I think after that, it just became like, stress management and like just overall like demand you were putting on the body management. I think if we didn't put his body in any too crazy of places from like pushing things too hard from a diet or drug or nutrition or training standpoint at like any too aggressive a point. So it usually could be managed. But obviously that's not always the reality when you're bodybuilding is if like, you have to push your training hard. You have to push the calories low sometime. Like it's just the reality of it. So no, it was definitely scary. I mean, but we managed it just through, taking as much stress off his kidneys as humanly possible. And then lowering like all inflammatory, markers as much as possible. You're trying to eat as clean from a, inflammatory standpoint as we possibly could, and things like that, which were things we weren't as concerned about before. But, after a while, we definitely got it under a good management. And then, he learned a lot on his own as well, to things that he could do just in his day-to-day life that he found helped manage as well. So it was definitely a learning period, and I don't have like 100% perfect answer, but yeah, it was just, from a whole kind of management standpoint, from kidney health, anything like you could think, like even, back then talking about astragalus, like these weren't even supplements that were really like popularized yet. So, finding a good supplement regime and like, protein intake being kind of monitored, along with his blood work and kind of where his kidney values were, and then sodium intake and stuff like that had to be very like closely monitored, and water intake and stuff like that. So it was kind of just like a full spectrum management of those things until we like had them under control,
Gotcha. Do you feel like the limitation of protein ever affected like his muscle mass or muscle, I don't know, his density in any sense, or?
Yeah. I mean, probably to some small degree, but not anything. I think most guys are as a whole, probably overeating protein. I think to at least like maintain, and like for him, it's not like he had to like grow massive amounts at that point. He was within the confines of the classic physique cutoff. So it wasn't like he could put on 20 more pounds of muscle. Like, so we weren't overly concerned about like growing. So, with them the protein being a little more monitored, and sodium, obviously the sodium being down, I mean, he definitely impacted his look in short term and in periods. But no, I mean, it didn't have any significant effect on it. I mean, I think we found a happy medium where he was getting enough in, his numbers well managed, that it was okay,
Yeah, gotcha. I guess last question about this I don't even know if there's a question actually, derp, but I had this argument with someone on my podcast because we were discussing TREN, and Chris said he doesn't take TREN anymore.
Yeah, he didn't.
And this guy was like straight up just like, well, Chris is lying.
No.
And I'm like, well, I mean, bro, like if you had an autoimmune disease that was affecting your kidneys, and TREN is what TREN is and affects your kidneys in the way that TREN does, bro, are you really going to give up your life and your family? You could take some other compounds.
No, it's not that, like where he was at his career wasn't that like necessary. And like I said, we were able to manage it through other like ways, but no, did he use it when we were like younger and in earlier preps? Sure. I mean, never crazy. He never did much dosing of anything, to be honest. But once that expressed itself, that was out and it never came back in. Not to my degree, not with working with me, at least. I don't believe it did with Hani either. So no, like there is definitely truth to that. Like you would just be like more of the test, Masteron or Primo and stuff like that, Winstraw, whatever, but it'd all be very moderate to low dosing and everything. Like the thing with Chris is like, you have to remember, Chris isn't like a 300-pound bodybuilder, like he's 240 on stage, but he's 6'1", he's a big guy, but like, he's not like and he also didn't really grow a lot in his years of bodybuilding. Like when he turned pro, he was competing only like 6 or 8 pounds less than he was at his biggest at the Olympia. There wasn't that's nuts. There wasn't like 30 pounds of growth that happened over those years or anything where he really would have had to push the anabolics or push the food or anything like that. Because of being in classical physique, he was a little safer in that regard, and that, it's like, okay, I can only weigh so much, so we don't need to push things to a higher level. Right. So no, but no, he didn't. Definitely after 2017, I don't think we ever used it again. I think we tried to put it in one time. He was under control, and we put it in at one point, and not so that his kidneys freaked out, but he started to like hold some water, which was like a pretty indicative thing of his kidneys having a little bit of problem. So we just pulled it back out. I think we kept it in for like 2 weeks. He started to have a bit of edema, and we pulled it back out. And then I don't think we ever used it again. Yeah.
Gotcha. Makes sense.
Yeah.
Bro. The 6 to 8 pounds, like showing on his lats was fucking insane of a change though.
Yeah, I mean, a big thing with him is like he did gain some muscle in the right spots, but I think a lot of it was he learned to present his physique a lot better. Like the year from 2019 to 2020, where it looked like his back like quadrupled in size, a lot of that wasn't actually his back got that much better. It's he changed how he posed it. He was standing very upright and kind of like pushing his spine, like flexing his spine backwards, versus after he kind of like contracted this way and kind of popped his lats back. So it was a bit of a different way that he posed it that definitely worked a lot better for him. I think there was some improvements there, but it was a lot less than people think between 19 and 20 in his back, versus just a way, way, way bigger difference in how he presented it,
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And it's one of the craziest things about posing is how it can really transform your physique like that.
Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah.
I actually noticed that too. And I had been, I used that as like a one of the templates for me. And whenever I'm making sure to do my back double bicep, because I do notice there's still a lot of athletes that tend to not kind of like pop those lats down, almost like pop the shoulders down and pop the lats back, and then hyperextend that lower back so it's not like curved outwards and the erectors are like protruding. Yeah, I feel like it makes a big difference. Yeah,
versus before he was staying very upright, if anything, kind of like leaning back like Phil Heath does. And for him, it just wasn't giving him any like depth or like pop to his back at all. And if you watch him on stage, like when his back started to look good, he would kind of like pop it down and you'd see it kind of like set his arms into his lats like that. So he just got a lot better at posing, spent more time with it, and really learned how to like show the best of his physique more than anything there. Then look, his back did improve a little bit, but like not to the degree that it really displayed because of the posing changes,
Yeah. KST Mario says, holy shit, let's fucking go. This pod is going to slap fucking love you. And then he asks, also, how does it feel to be 41% gay?
Feels good. At least I'm not 50, just got to keep it under 50,
Just got to keep it under 50.
Yeah. As long as I'm under 50, I'm safe,
It's a little hard sometimes.
Yeah, it is. Especially with that trend, when the trend's in, things start to become a little more desirable than they would do without it.
He asks, so what's your best body part in your opinion?
Oh, man.
Aside from what's hidden.
Fuck, I don't know. When I was competing, I mean, it changed throughout my career. Like early in my career, I had really, really good delts and arms that like almost overpowered everything else. My shoulders were probably like my best body part early in my career. And then as I kind of changed things and my physique bounced out a bit, I mean, my legs, like my side leg was probably like in my side chest, my quarter turns, my side tricep. Like I probably had one of the best side legs in the whole pro league for a few years.
That thing is fucking massive, bro.
Yeah. Like my side leg was probably one of the better ones for sure. So yeah, I mean, like shoulders are like side leg, hamstring. I had really good hamstring drop, good side quad. I mean, my quads are still good from the front, like very detailed. But like, I wouldn't say they were the best quads out there, but they were still very good. So yeah, I mean, probably my legs and my shoulders, my chest and back probably being the weakest. My back got better as I got older for sure. But yeah, things kind of changed throughout my career for sure. Yeah.
Do you feel like that, the hamstring thing was a little bit more genetic, or was it more of like a training thing for you?
No, I think it's definitely genetic. I think it's how your hamstring inserts and drops is definitely, well, obviously a byproduct of how much muscle you have there. More muscle will display better. I think I learned really early on how to pose them really well, to really like position my legs to kind of like smush that hamstring up against the back leg and really get the most out of it. Where I think a lot of guys make a lot of posing errors on the side shots where they don't smush it up against the back leg. They have the legs kind of too perpendicular, not that front leg, the front facing stage leg far enough up amongst the other leg. And I think a lot of guys make the mistake of flexing their hamstring on side poses, which is like an absolute no-go. You just need to let it like relax and let it hang. So yeah, it was posing. And then, yeah, I mean, my hamstrings have always been pretty decent. But I mean, I was also like a really heavy, like RDL deadlifter, like train my hamstrings like this. So as they got more muscle, it definitely looked better, but a lot of it was just genetics of how they were kind of inserted and stuff like that as well.
Okay. That's cool. Yeah. I love looking at all the genetic differences across races.
Yeah.
I don't think it's racist.
No.
Like fucking, I've noticed there's a lot of white guys that tend to have the craziest fucking hamstrings.
Yeah.
Like you even look at like Anton's physique as he got 6 at Pittsburgh.
Yeah.
And like, dude, his hamstring is just absolutely massive and the sweep is just like perfectly shaped.
Yeah.
And then, you go look at some East Asians and Koreans and their quads are just fucking
quads and calves. Yeah.
Annoying.
No, it's crazy. I know. Yeah.
So then people ask me, they're like, oh yeah, you're Asian, right? You got big legs. And I'm like, more like a Filipino genetics. I feel like the only thing that we have is like lats, but the legs are definitely not there.
That's
especially the calves.
Yeah,
it's rough.
Mine were good. It's funny because like obviously the running joke with me is my calves. Like how my fucking calves sucked and stuff. But The funny thing is, if you actually look early in my career, I had like hunter-labrador calves for like the first 5 years of my life, like bodybuilding career. It's some kind of nerve death that I had in the back of my knee that I think happened from wearing knee sleeves. I'm not 100% sure.
Okay.
But like the inside, like head of my gastroc just like died off kind of slowly after like 2018, 2019, slowly just got like a little worse every year. But yeah, my calves, like if I have pictures from like early where I had fucking like gigantor calves, like they were genetically, I have really, really good calves, but yeah, I think just squatting really heavy in like knee wraps and knee sleeves where it's jamming into the back of your knee with like the wrap or the sleeve under high load and high pressure, killed off that fucking nerve bed that supplies to the inner gastroc. Cause like my outer calf is fine. It still stayed the same. Yeah. But like the inner head, just like, and even when I feel it, it feels just like fucking ground beef. Like it's like dead, Yeah.
I feel like the inner head is what matters too.
I know. Especially from the front, like especially from the front, like that's what you see like popping out on the side of your leg, So like, yeah, that definitely sucked. I mean, I really didn't notice it much until people started saying it online. And then I was like, holy fuck. Yeah. And then I started looking back at my pictures and you could see like every year they just like got a little worse. And then,
damn.
Yeah, I mean, it's not like a product of training. I mean, I actually trained my calves less when they were big. But yeah, it's just, I think over years of like squatting and fucking stuff super heavy, it just fucked them up somehow,
Yeah, me too.
Yeah, that's your excuse too.
There was a couple of the questions actually about the nerve damage.
Yeah.
I think a lot of people were curious about that. Was there ever like anything related to like the back area with the nerve damage, or was it?
No, I don't have any nerve issues in my back. I mean, I think you do get guys. I mean, you saw it with Ramy a little bit too, how their lats ride up and stuff like that. I don't know if that's necessarily a nerve issue or just like damage to the muscle over time and it kind of just rides up the tendons a little bit. I'm not sure exactly. I mean, I've had nerve induction tests done everywhere. And I don't have any issues in my like upper back or spine or lats or any area like that, versus my calves, so yeah, no, not to any significant degree. But the thing was weird with that is like, it kind of looked different year to year. And I think I also posed it differently and didn't display it as well some years as others. So I'm not really sure if I have a good answer for that, but yeah, I mean, I found definitely when I stopped deadlifting really heavy, my back didn't look as good. Especially like my erectors and how my lats tied into everything as well. I definitely lost some depth on that, like the last year of my career when I stopped doing like the super heavy deadlifts. So I think it might've been just a loss of muscle in certain areas, that, was not good calls I was making from a training standpoint. But yeah, no, I don't think there's any significant nerve loss there. I mean, my lats feel fine. There's no strength loss versus like my calves. There's obviously like something going on there,
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. The question might've been more related to like the nerve issue. Cause I don't know if it was, these bodybuilding Instagram accounts where they compare bodybuilders and then piss a lot of people off. Yeah. It was one of those recently where I was like, I was looking at Kaiki at Pittsburgh. And it was like making these connections that his left calf inside is really small because there's like probably nerve damage in his back or something. I compared it to like
maybe. I mean, some guys do get it. It's something that happens in their lower back. That's where it supplies the nerves down to both calves. So it could be coming from different places. It could not be at all. I mean, it's hard to say. With calves are a tricky one because they're so easy to kill off like that. It is a common thing I've seen with a lot of guys now that I've had it. And I've like a lot of guys have messaged me over the years. I saw it with a ton of guys that, Dennis Wolf and other guys that had their calves die off over time. I think it's just, either something that happens at like the lower back, like, an impingement in the spine there that's killing the nerve supply, or in the back of the knee, it like happens one place or the other. Yeah.
Damn. It's crazy.
Yeah. But I mean, like, look, if I was going to lose anything on my physique, I'm happy to like, look, having big calves is cool, but like from a bodybuilding perspective, it's the thing that affects your physique from a competitive standpoint by far the least, Yeah. Like if you lose your fucking arms or your fucking quads or like something like that, you're kind of fucked. But like losing your calves, I still placed the same whether I had them or not. It didn't really change anything in my career,
What about the size of your glutes? Like not the peeled or not the striations, but like the size of your glutes.
Like how big they were?
Well,
or what do you
mean? like how do you feel like it's judged compared to something like calves, like the size of a guy's glutes on stage?
I think glutes don't matter to be big. I think they only matter if they're underdevelopedly small. Like someone like Michael Krizo, you know, I think when you can see they're underdeveloped in ratio to the rest of the physique, I think that's a detriment.
Okay.
But I also think on the other side that having too big of glutes is definitely a detractor for your physique as well. Like, you know, I had at one point where I actually intentionally brought my glutes down, like stopped doing a lot of things that I thought was giving them too much, because I started to notice in my back poses, they were like detracting. It's like all you would see was my glutes and they were like really overdeveloped. And I even work with a guy right now that, you know, his quads have been like a point that we want to bring up, and his glutes are like super overdeveloped. And that's obviously regarding to how he trains and foot positioning and, you know, hip drive and a bunch of things like that. So, you know, changes like that you have to make in your training. So yeah, I think it can go on both sides. I think having too big of glutes compared to the rest of you could definitely be like kind of an eyesore and look kind of weird and take away from your physique. And I think if they're too small, but I think kind of anything in the middle is fine. Like, I don't think bigger is necessarily better if they're detailed the same. But I think once they start to get too small where they're like, what the fuck, this guy's no glutes, then it looks weird for sure. Especially on side poses too. Like, you know, if you're doing a side chest and like you don't have like a glute kind of, you know, rounded framing into the hamstring and tying into the leg, I think that can look weird for sure. It kind of ruins the flow of those poses. Like Krizo, it kind of goes like flat from his back into his hamstring where there's not like kind of anything to flow and make that pose really flow nicely there. So I think it can definitely hurt shots. But yeah, I mean, there's guys with not great glutes. Like, you know, Nick Walker doesn't have like super big or good glutes by any means. He's still one of the best bodybuilders in the world. And I don't think it takes away from his physique in any dramatic fashion, you know?
Okay.
Yeah.
Do you ever feel like there's an issue when like some bodybuilders like flex their glutes to get the striations out? Like it becomes like significantly smaller?
Yeah, I mean, look, it's tough because there's kind of like two ways to pose these. It's like, you know, you get guys that kind of pop their hips back a bit more. You're going to definitely get more adductor width, and like you're going to get more appearance of size, but it also becomes harder to contract the glute when you're pushing your hip back. So, you know, there is guys that are really good at it, you know, but it's definitely like you look at like that Josema guy, like he does it perfectly. He pops his hip back, but he can still get a good contraction in the glutes, but that's also because he's fucking peeled out of his skull. So like when you're that lean, you're going to see lines in your glutes. So yeah, I mean, the trick to make everything look good is just to be peeled. So no, I generally think popping the hips back so they're like more in line with the body or slightly behind versus contracting and having your hips forward is usually going to be worse. So I think you should generally have them underneath you or behind and pushing the adductors out a bit more and pushing the glutes out a bit more. But you need to be able to still get some kind of contraction in the glutes, or it's just going to look like you don't have glutes in shape, you know?
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Iain Vade asks, how does it feel being Canada's? How does it feel being Canada's greatest bodybuilder?
Well, this is a thing of contention. So, I mean, from an analytical standpoint, statistically, I am the best Canadian bodybuilder. But I think a lot of people would still say Paul Dillett is the best Canadian bodybuilder. So, it's tough. I mean, it's cool. I mean, it's something that I like to milk and make jokes out of for sure. Especially when Fuad's with me. Like, I'll definitely tell him all day that I'm the best Canadian bodybuilder. You know,
yeah.
You know, because I do have the most pro wins and stuff like that. But I mean, Paul Dillett has a higher Olympia placing than me. And there was a lot more guys competing at all the shows during the year. So, you know, getting pro wins was harder to come by then. So yeah, it's different, but I mean, I'll take the credit. So thank you.
Christian Hennessy asks, breakup advice. I'm going through it and lost all motivation to train, diet, etc.
Yeah. I mean, it's tough, man. I mean, the way I look at this is, don't add insult to injury. You know what I mean? Like when you're already feeling down about the breakup, there's nothing that's going to make you feel worse than like making you like not be proud of what you look like and like doing things that make you feel good, you know? So I think you really just need to like remember, like, you know, that doing these positive steps, you know, like the training and keeping your nutrition in check and like feeling good about how you look are going to make you feel better and more confident, like after the breakup, versus if you kind of just let everything slide, it's just going to like dog pile on like shit onto shit, you know? So I know it's not easy and like you just want to kind of fucking lay there and not train, you're demotivated and stuff like that. But, you know, I think like on the other side of that, you're going to feel a lot better if you know, put more time into like yourself and into things that you enjoy and things that make you feel good about yourself, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I think so too. Yeah. Maybe a little extra test also.
Yeah, crank that up a little bit.
Muxus asks, how's your fertility journey and any tips / protocol for us?
Mine's long, man. I mean, fuck, when I first retired from bodybuilding, my fucking sperm count was like literally 0. So it's coming up, but it's coming up slowly but surely. So I don't know how much longer I'm going to tough out this journey of like trying to naturally conceive, or if I'm just going to fucking bite the bullet and, we're going to go do a couple rounds of IVF and hopefully get one successful.
Yeah.
Because like, I don't know, to really be like, have a good chance at natural conception. I mean, you want your sperm count, like at bare minimum, like 20 million. I mean, really 40, 60, 80, 100 is like more ideal to have like good odds. And I'm not at that level yet, like of even 20 million. I'm not even really even close. So, it's like, I know sometimes it'll just go and then all of a sudden your numbers shoot up, but I'm also been off even TRT for like over a year. And I don't know how much longer I'm like willing to do that, so, so we'll probably go this summer to Turkey to like the Now Hair Time guys actually have a good connection for us, and probably blast out around IVF down there. And then if that's successful, then great. And if not, then we'll just keep firing them out until we are. So yeah, I mean, that's probably where we're at now. I mean, I'm getting ants in my pants now to fucking get back to my normal life and things like that. So, and it's hard when it's, for me, it's hard when like all the things you do in the day, you're like worrying about, is this going to have like negative ramifications on my fertility? It's like, I'm putting a Zyn in and I'm like, fuck, this nicotine's bad for your fucking nuts. Like everything that I do, it's like, like you're just always thinking about it, of like things that you should and shouldn't do that might be good or bad. And it's like, it's just like a tough mental thing on you, and then it's like, even when you're fucking your wife, it's like, you're always like just thinking about making babies. And it's like, it becomes like a different dynamic of it. So I'm ready to just get over with it. So we'll probably just do IVF and hopefully that's good. But
okay.
I mean, tips for it. I mean, I don't know. I mean, I obviously, if your protocol is going to be important, if your count's not good, or even if it is and you're trying to make it better, I mean, HCG, I mean, ideally FSH, like RFSH is going to be your best case, or HMG. FSH is actually going to be a little better than straight HMG. But they both work fine. I mean, HMG is FSH and LH, but the actual just RFSH does work a little better. And then with HCG, I'll tell people to be more aggressive than they think, because one, if you're coming off test, or even if you're using it, it can keep you propped up from a feeling standpoint a lot more. Like I was able to keep my test levels at like 940 by hammering enough HCG, So, a lot of the protocols the doctors will give, I think, are a little on the conservative side in terms of HCG management. So, I think you can go 2,000-3,000 units 3 times a week, and it's always, I think more than 3 doesn't really do much more in terms of, spermatogenesis, but up to 3,000 units 3 times a week can be beneficial. And then in terms of what it does from just like a feeling normal standpoint, I think there's a lot of benefit in that as well. Right. Because that's one of the toughest things, especially for bodybuilders, when they, if they're coming off tests, let's say they are, is just like the process becomes very daunting, because you fucking feel like shit in the gym, your energy's low, your motivation's low, your sex drive's low, and like all these things. And it's tough to stay the course on that. So I think if you can at least get enough HCG in you to like make you feel relatively normal, it makes that whole process a lot easier for sure.
Gotcha. Yeah. That's cool.
Yeah. And then injectable carnitine is very valuable as well, for sure, for like sperm health. So, 500 milligrams a day is probably pretty good there.
Damn. I didn't even know that.
Yeah.
Huh. Dude, that's like my least favorite thing to ever inject.
Yeah, it hurts, especially if you're doing higher doses. Yeah, it fucking burns like a bitch. Yeah.
I guess the one thing I would have to say to that is, after talking to a couple doctors, it does seem like for anyone that is worried about the fertility in the long run, that we've seen running HCG during your cycle to honestly be pretty beneficial for a lot of guys. Yep. So just be
and you don't even need much. Like even just doing like, 1 shot a week to keep a pulse in there, like doing 500 to 1,000 units once a week or twice a week or whatever, just keeping a bit in there to like, keep that process going, I think can be beneficial instead of like trying to fucking jumpstart it years later,
Yeah. Just be careful because your loads still get big.
Yeah. That's fun though.
Connor Sams asks how to know how much GH to take, considering how big you are.
No, I mean, I think like anything, you just start low and then kind of, I found GH, I kind of found a sweet spot, kind of like the 6 units, but I mean, you can still get really good. Like start at 1 to 2 units. I mean, I think 2 is a good starting point. You know, start with 2 units a day and then kind of see how you feel. I mean, you know, the thing is, it's like, you need to ask yourself, like, what are you trying to achieve out of it? And if you're trying to become a 300-pound Goliath, GH is not going to do that for you. I'm sorry. Like, I think people have this like false perception of GH, that it's like this drug that just morphs guys into monsters. And out of all the compounds I've used, GH is probably the least pronounced in terms of its like progress and gains and results. Do I think it made positive impact on me as a bodybuilder? Sure. You know, from a fat burning standpoint, skin quality standpoint, sleep, I mean, a bunch of other things I think it did. You know, the kind of fullness and roundness look that I had to my muscles, I think it enhanced a little bit. You know, but I think, did I ever use it and be like, holy fuck, I'm growing like crazy because of GH? No. Yeah. I don't think it really does much to that standpoint from any significant degree compared to training food, anabolics, you know, stuff like that. But, you know, I mean, start with 2 units and, you know, work your way up to like a maximum of 6 and kind of see how you feel in between there. And I think that's probably a good spot.
I guess I wanted to pick your brain about something curious, but like, I think no one really truly knows about this. Though I think more people lean to one place, which is that GH and insulin work inversely. So naturally, if you want to replicate the natural process, you want to make sure that you're taking your GH when your insulin is back down low again. But I know Patrick was discussing this on one of Food's podcasts about his belief in taking GH, and he believes that obviously you shouldn't be doing this a lot because, you know, taking GH during around the same time that your insulin is high is obviously going to increase your insulin resistance in the long run. But he believes that with GH and insulin both being these very two anabolic hormones, and like this rise of IGF1 is greatest when insulin and GH are both higher, that sometimes you do take GH at the same time when your insulin is high.
Yeah, no, and this is a thing that I guess I want to hear your opinion on it. When people say taking GH, you know, like on an empty stomach or when there's not insulin present or things like this, to my knowledge, these studies are talking about natural GH secretion and natural insulin secretion. So, and kind of having like a shunting effect of each other. To my knowledge, I don't think it matters as much when you're taking exogenous growth hormone. I don't think your like natural like insulin from having carbs present is going to do anything to like hurt the exogenous. Will it maybe suppress your natural GH secretion? Yes, but you're giving yourself exogenous GH. So I don't know how much of an impact it actually even has. Right. You know, like I don't think there's that much stock in taking GH on an empty stomach or away from food or presence of insulin anyway, to any large degree. I've done it every single way that you could possibly imagine with GH, fasted, not fasted, microdose, 1 unit fucking 8 times a day, doing 2 units 3 times a day, whatever. I've done everything you could do. And I didn't notice any really dramatic difference at all, you know, even at higher doses of it. So yeah, I think most of that is like, yeah, with natural insulin and GH secretion, like, you know, eating carbs before bed and then it's, you know, shunting GH release over your sleep and things like that. But like, you're just giving yourself, it's like saying the same thing as like, well, yeah, don't do this because it'll block natural testosterone production. It's like, yeah, but I'm shooting a gram of test. It fucking doesn't matter. It's fake, you know? Right, exactly. So yeah, I'm not sure. But I remember Patrick saying things about this, you know, with taking them at the same time when we were competing. I can't, like you said, that was obviously his reasoning. I don't remember it exactly now. But yeah, I mean, I'm always weary on people saying the GH and insulin at the same time having negative, you know, counter indications on each other. Cause I was like, I don't know if that's quite right reading of the studies to it. Cause I think they're all done from not taking exogenous hormones. They're from natural like rhythms, you know? Right. Yeah. So honestly, I totally agree with you. And obviously this is all theoretical, right? But from my own experiences and from talking with a lot of these people who like to study this a lot, you know, I mean, obviously we don't know, you know, people can judge their credibility by themselves, but like, you know, fucking Vigor Steve, Kurt, Dr. Dean, Patrick, there's Dr. Todd, there's been a lot of people that have like discussed their own theories on this. From my personal experience, obviously we know that, I guess, the IGF-1 readings you get in your blood work obviously don't dictate like your systemic IGF-1. Yeah. But if we want to say that, like, obviously it can potentially correlate, like if you're increasing your liver IGF-1, then potentially, you know, your systemic IGF-1 is increasing too. Sure.
when I did do the protocols under Patrick, where I wouldn't really give a fuck about like waiting long enough after my meal or whatever, and make sure it's like my stomach's in a fasted state before I take my GH. And I would take it like the GH, like say just 30 minutes after I ate my meal, for example. And I got my blood work tested, my IGF1, which when I'm not taking GH happens to be really low, unfortunately, like 110. It would end up in the 400s still, regardless of whether or not it was GH in a fasted state or not. So, I don't know what that means, but that's just the result I got. And then from talking to all these guys and their theories, I mean, to me, it seems like it really doesn't really matter when you take the GH.
That's been my experience. I don't think it matters.
Yeah. And I guess if you want to take it if you want to take it for the purpose of fat burning before your cardio, like, you want to do it fasted. I don't know whether or not it'll kick in fast enough if you do it subcutaneously or not, but like, I mean, does it really matter that much?
Yeah. Just do your GH intravenously, then you'll be good. You know?
And then the only other discussion I had, which was with Brian Moscow, the gorilla chemist, is the concept of like, if you do only have enough money for a certain amount of GH, we discussed the potential possibility of like maybe just saving the GH for like when you inject it in the morning or post workout, and then not injecting the GH before bed. So then your natural levels of GH still rise anyways before bed. Yeah, but that's only if you need to save money.
Yeah, I actually never did GH before bed. I would do it first thing in the morning and then post training is like kind of what I always did.
Okay.
For the most part. I mean, like I said, I've tried everything under the sun, but I was usually training at like 4:30 PM to like 6:30 PM. So I would do it like you were saying with Patrick after that post training meal, and then I would do it fasted in the morning. So that was like the 2 times I did it. Then that's kind of like how I always operated, and I always had good success with that. And I didn't find too much of a variance from having one way or the other, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. Okay, cool. Codward asks, what was your best off season and why, and best prep and why?
I mean, they're probably both one into the same. I mean, I think my 2021, yeah, 2021 going, no, 2020, end of 2020 going into 2021, you know, and like we were saying earlier, like I stayed a little bit leaner that off season. Like instead of getting up to like 300 plus, I stayed at like a, you know, pretty manageable 285. And I was by far the strongest I'd ever been. I mean, that was like the years when I had like videos of me, like, you know, cranking out 5-plate incline barbell, like it was fucking like 185, you know, like it just everything felt so light to me that year. I remember just like any weight I felt like I wanted to move, I could move. And my food wasn't like in a crazy spot. Like I was eating and I was, you know, it was like not easy to get my food in, but it was not like I was like fucking choking on food and gagging, fucking taking 6 liters of water to get it down.
Yeah.
You know, stuff like that. Like some of the miserable off seasons I have had. I kept a little more cardio in that off season. And then that kind of led into a much more successful and better competition season. So like that was when I went into one Tampa, then Texas, then the Arnold that year. So yeah, I mean, that was probably the best off season into a best competitive season. I mean, best overall prep, I mean, is hard to say. You know, the first Olympia I did in 2018 with Jansen, I remember that prep just feeling like everything was like so smooth and so responsive, and like we would change food by like a little bit and I'd get such a dramatic response, and like, you know, we'd do a little bit of a carb, like a cheat meal or a high day, and like I'd look so much bigger and fuller the next day. And like I remember that time, that prep, just feeling like everything was just like firing at like 110%, and like I felt like everything was so responsive. So that was probably the one I remember as being like not necessarily the best because it wasn't my best look, but like just the most fun and easy one. Cause like everything just felt like so cool and so like so manipulative, like manipulatable. You know, but yeah, the off season in 2020 going to 2021 was definitely my best. Yeah.
Okay. Do you remember what your calories were around in that off season?
No, I don't remember. I mean, I could calculate it kind of based off rough. I was probably in like, you know, 400 grams of rice a meal, you know, 200 grams of meat, you know, in like 6 meals, you know, something like that, whatever that kind of works out to be. But it wasn't anything like, I definitely had gone higher, so it wasn't anything like too insane. Yeah.
I feel like 400 grams of rice is like almost 120 grams of carbs. Or am I being dumb?
Yeah, it's probably about that, maybe more.
Of rice to 28 grams of carbs.
Yeah.
Yeah. Damn.
Oh yeah, yeah. But it was a good amount. It was probably like 700 to 800 grams of carbs a day, maybe more. You know. So I mean, yeah, if you put it all together, I mean, probably 6,000, 5,800 to 6,500 calories, somewhere in that range. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
No, that's savage. Did you ever have to use things like betaine, HCl? Like
I've definitely used it.
Protein?
Yeah. Yeah. I definitely have used it like periodically throughout my career. And I did think it helped for sure. You know, especially like, you know, when I had periods where I'd get like fucking, you know, acid reflux or like heartburn from like eating the amount of food, or if you have any oral drugs in, I definitely found that it helped with that for sure as well.
Okay. That's cool.
Yeah.
I've always been okay with my digestion, but for some reason in the last, like, I think I'm like really ending the end of this bulk, and Patrick's also like kind of like on the borderline of body fat, which is making me feel awesome. But the last like 4 or 5 weeks or something, I've been having these massive putrid farts at night, like multiple farts that wake me up at night and shit.
Have you used the oral BPC 157?
Oh no, not oral. I haven't used oral yet.
I found the oral. I'm using one right now that's the oral BPC 157 with this KPV stuff in it. And I've actually felt it's made a big difference, like in my, just like my overall feeling of like appetite and digestive, like motility and everything like that. I've definitely found it's made like a big uptick in that.
Okay, cool. I'll probably try to utilize that. The betaine though has helped me definitely with like the, the putrid,
it definitely does help.
Farts.
Yeah.
And I guess this is something we kind of talked about earlier, but I think we only talked about the prep portion. But I was kind of curious because Fouad was discussing his own sweet spot in his off season, but why you felt like your sweet spot with your compounds were in your own off season.
Yeah, I mean, similar to my prep, I kind of like found a sweet spot with that, like that I kind of kept consistent. Pretty much would almost always, I kind of kept it the same, like off season prep in terms of my test dose. It was pretty much always 700 to maybe I'd push it to 1,000 a week in the off season, but generally like I just really liked for some reason doing 100 milligrams of prop every day. Don't ask me why. I just like, I was doing injections every day anyways. You know, I just like liked the idea of doing that. I never would forget it. It just made me feel healthier, you know, doing it every day.
I inject every day too.
So I would just do, most of the time I would do just 100 milligrams of prop. And then in the off season, for a lot of years, I really liked using NPP. So I would probably put like, 400 milligrams of that in. And then I had a couple off seasons where I might put in like some EQ or something like that. But for the most part, like in my off seasons, I generally would operate at like 2 compounds, maybe a third. So like, let's say 1,000 milligrams of test, 400 to 500 milligrams of NPP. And then if I was putting in something else, like say I did put in a Primo or a Mastron or something at like, 400 to 600 milligrams. So like a 1,800, 2,000 milligrams total for that would be like the most I would go in an off season, over 2 or 3 compounds. Yeah.
Okay. There's this, I had this comment, like, I think just on my last podcast. I don't even fucking remember what my last podcast was. I just had this comment that came up on, I think it was a podcast with Eric and Marcus, but it was saying like, I used to think that all bodybuilders were taking more than 4 grams, but now after like listening to so many like athletes and whatever, like I realize like I'd be surprised if any bodybuilder says that they're taking over 2 grams total.
Yeah, no, I think probably most guys are, most guys are probably in a pretty similar range of like, probably in that 2 grams to, 1,500 maybe to 2,500, maybe some guys at the high end of like maybe 3,000. It's tougher to say in a prep setting, because when you combine like all the oral dosings and stuff like that, like, like my total combined injectable dose in a prep would only be like maybe 1,300 milligrams. But then when you get close to a show and like, say you have, 20 milligrams of Halo in, you got 50 milligrams of Winstrol in, 50 milligrams a day, but there's 7 days in a week. So then you're adding that as another 350 milligrams. Yeah. So by the time you add that, I was probably on average, like, let's say, 1,700 milligrams a week in an off season, probably like 2,000 to 2,500 in a prep at the peak of a prep closest to a show. So that was probably like where I operated 90% of the time. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. I feel like that makes so much sense, honestly. I mean, yeah, from all the bodybuilders I heard, at first I was surprised when I heard Martin tell me what his normal stack was, because I think I was used to hearing some bodybuilders like Fouad saying his sweet spot for test alone was like 1,200.
Yeah.
And then, I mean, this is Phil Heath, but Phil Heath said on a podcast that the highest his test ever went was 1,300, which I believe.
I believe that. I've never gone higher than, I think 1,200 would be the highest I've ever gone with test. And I was like really young. I mean, most times I would never go over 1,000. And like I said, for a lot of years, I just kept doing this 100 milligrams a day of prop. And like, I felt good doing that. So yeah, I mean, like I've done, 1,200 milligrams of test with other compounds. So it combines to be more when I was younger.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, 1,300 for Phil. I mean, honestly, I'm surprised he's even gone that high, to be honest, for knowing Phil,
Yeah. Yeah. And then Martin told me like his is normally like 750 tests. And then, I don't know if he said like 750 EQ or something. Yeah. But yeah, I mean,
see, that seems like, I know people wouldn't believe that, but that sound like, to me, that would be a pretty normal off season for like me or a lot of guys, like I was saying, like, I was doing the 700 to 1,000 tests. So kind of in that same range that Martin's saying. And then I was adding in like a NPP or EQ or whatever, or splitting the dose between an NPP and a Mastron or Primo or something, for a combined other 600-700 milligrams a week. So yeah, I mean, I completely believe Martin on that. I mean, 1,400-1,500 milligrams, for over 2 compounds. I completely believe that. I mean, that's more than enough to render like good dose. You combine that, and then you probably got, 6 units of growth hormone in, you got a lot of good food, heavy training. I mean, that's way more than enough anabolics to render growth for sure,
Right. Yeah. And then I don't know if you know Dura, but he also said like Dura, like I think my audience is known for like liking Derick because they feel like he's super real, the way he talks, and shit. Yeah. But like he was talking about like, some of his big off seasons, he'd be running like at least a gram of test and then plus a bunch of other compounds. But he did say in the sustainable off seasons, which, Martin's like running this, for example, every single off season. Yeah. His was like 700. So I'm hearing like this range for open bodybuilders. Like,
so we're all kind of saying the same thing.
Yeah. You're all saying the same thing. It's like
we're all saying the same thing.
Within like a 500 milligram difference or range.
Look, and like I've obviously met lots of bodybuilders over the years, and they're all kind of within the same range. I've met some guys that are going a little lower, that like maybe an off season for them would be like 600-700 test with like, 300 milligrams of NPP. So maybe like or Mastron or fucking whatever, so like a total combined of like a gram or like 1,200. And I've met guys that are like, doing 1,500 tests with, 1,000 milligrams of EQ or something. So 2,500 combined, but you're still always in that, 1,500 to 2,500 range. Like finding many guys that are doing, especially in an off season setting, doing 4 grams a gear. I've never come across that. And if I have come across it, it was guys that were like not top level bodybuilders. They were usually amateur bodybuilders that were trying to be good bodybuilders. Yeah. That thought that's what they needed to do, or were trying to overcome genetic inadequacies to get to that level. Right. By doing like crazy amounts. Like I'm sure we've all like, I mean, I've seen some guys, that were just fucking regular dudes almost looking, that were taking the craziest cycles I've ever seen,
Yeah. Yeah. I enjoyed the explanations that I heard from figures like Dr. Dean about how like, like you saturate your androgen receptors, right? Yeah. But as you grow more muscle, you grow more androgen receptors, so you can take more. But if you're like a freaking small guy and then you're taking like 2 grams of 3 grams of it off the bat, all the rest of that, those androgens are going to the receptors in your hair, the receptors in your skin. You're getting a lot more side effects for the exact same benefits.
Yeah, and that's a good gauge for guys to use. Like if you're noticing you're getting a lot of side effects like that, like like your skin, and you're getting, experience like expedited hair loss and things like that, then you're like, okay, I'm probably taking more than I need to, like you look at someone like Phil Heath, like, throughout his career, he had like perfect skin the entire career. Like his skin is like, looks like it's made of plastic, like you can look at some of these things of like how side effects of drug use, it doesn't always, but in a lot of ways will express itself in people,
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. There's so many questions here, bro. I guess maybe we can just close this up with a couple more.
Yeah, get like 1 or 2 more. That's good.
ZMZ Strength 97 asks, do you want a boy or a girl? And pick, don't say you're lucky to have either.
I won't say that. I have a preference. I would definitely honestly prefer to have a girl. I don't know why. My sister's got a girl. Chris and Courtney had a girl. Yeah, I don't know. It's just like the idea of being like having like a little girl to protect, I like more. And I also know what like kind of a fucking shitbird I was when I grew up, and it would be fun to have a kid like that. But I also I plan on having more than one kid. So, but for a first one, I would definitely like to have a girl, I think. Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah. But it's funny. I think now my odds are probably back to normal. Like when you're a bodybuilder, I feel like all bodybuilders have girls. And I think it's a temperature thing, to my knowledge. It's like something with temperature. Yeah, someone explained it to me once. Yeah, it's literally something to do with that. Like if you're, when you're using anabolics and your like base temperature is increased, or the temperature of your fucking testicles or something, it does something to the sperm morphology, or I don't know what it is, but apparently it's something to do with heat. But like I've been off everything for years, so I feel like I'm probably going to fucking shoot at a boy at this point, but I don't really give a fuck. But if I'm picking, I would like to have a girl first. Yeah. Yeah.
Burns your sperm to have an inferior gender.
So you got to dip your nuts in the cold plunge before you fucking bang your wife,
Yeah. I feel like I wanted to have a girl at first, but then I thought about whenever they hit puberty. So I don't know.
Yeah, that's true too. You got to fucking deal with that whole process, which is rough too. But that's something that that Melissa will have to deal with, not me.
Hi, this is Max. Asks, who wins out of Iain and Chris in a wrestling match? But first time meet and Iain slept with Miles.
I think he means Melissa.
Oh yeah, probably. Spell it with a Y.
I don't know what he's talking about. Okay, so first me and Chris in a wrestling match, but what?
But first time, but it's a first time meet, and Iain slept with Melissa.
Okay, so he found out I banged his sister. We've just met, and we're wrestling. Yeah, obviously I'm fucking Chris up. Come on, let's be honest. We've actually only wrestled once, and we were both like really fucking drunk.
Yeah, of course.
I remember this. We'd been out at the bar, me, him, and Melissa and some friends, and we got back. I had a condo at the time, and and we were, I don't know, I can't remember. It was like I was really drunk, sitting at the counter, like eating something, and he was like drunk, being a shitbird, like coming up behind me and like whispering shit in my ear, trying to like irritate me. And then we ended up fucking wrestling on the floor once, and I like actually got mad, and I think he was kind of like silly laughing around. So I fucking got like actually mad, like got him on the ground and fucking choked him until he's like, okay. And that's the only time we've ever wrestled. Nice. So I'll take that one win to the grave,
Fire.
Yeah.
I fucking, Sean, if you're listening to this, I'm sorry. But, at one of the Young LA after parties, we were at like Gary's place, and, they were having a pool party and shit. It was like when the night was over, right? So everyone's pretty fucking drunk and fucked up. And I don't know how this happened, but Shizzy comes up to me, and we were like hanging out, but now I know that this kid is plastered. I fucking know. You just know, bro. When when they're looking at you, but they're not looking at you. Like he James is also in the area, and I
actually just saw this video of James and Shizzy.
Yeah, bro. Well, I fucking feel bad because Shizzy turns to me and he's like, bro, tell me to fuck him up for you. And I'm like, what are you talking about, bro? I don't want you to fuck him up. He's like, no, bro, I'll fuck him up. I'll fuck him up if you tell me to. Tell me to fuck him up for you. And I'm just like, what the fuck is going on? I feel like I shouldn't do this. Yeah. But I'm like, I've only known Sean for like how many days now, right?
Yeah.
So I'm just like,
all right, fuck it, bro.
Fuck him up.
Go for it. Yeah, fuck him up, bro.
Fucking like 1 minute in, fucking 1 minute in, bro. James picks him up and slams him on the fucking ground, dude. I saw that, and I'm just like, oh man, I fucked up. And then later on that night, like I'm sitting on the pool by Sean, and I'm hoping this is okay. I think I'm talking about it because I think it's a super cool thing. But like Gary's there and Sean's just crying, right? Yeah. And I'm just like, oh man, this kid's fucked up. But Sean's just like crying about his mom, and he's like, I love my mom so much, and like she's like, finally we can like give her a place, and like now we're finally making money for her, and like this was like some deep shit. Yeah. But I'm like, if Shizzy just got in like this wrestling match and now is like crying about his mom, because it's like feels so deep and emotional and happy for him, I'm like, this guy is not going to remember any of this.
No, he's not.
Any of it.
That's funny.
So I feel bad. Anyways, all right, let's just pick one last random question.
Yeah, one more.
There's a couple questions on people love the mass primo discussion, but one of them was just like Demetrius Gods asks, which one do you prefer, primo or masked?
It's tough to say. I mean, I didn't find them really dramatically different in my opinion. The thing is, I always hedge towards the side of using Mastron because I just trusted it more. I'm like a massive skeptic on like trusting the efficacy of most primo that's out there to be actually even be primo, you know?
Yeah.
That I'm not just fucking taking Mastron, paying more for it anyways, you know? So I
mean,
always,
after all these tariffs and stuff, I'm a little bit more sus. I don't know if you noticed, but like a lot of bodybuilders and people are having trouble getting primo. Maybe sometimes.
Yeah, well, I think because of the
primo.
tariffs to China, I think it's fucked up. A lot of the like labs and like the places that make the raw materials over in China are fucking like fucked, you know?
Yeah.
So getting raw materials over here, I think has been really hard for a lot of the labs. So I think, yeah, I mean, there's definitely a shortage of stuff for a lot of these guys and getting raw materials over here to make decent stuff. So
yeah.
I definitely see that. but yeah, no, I usually erred on the side of caution, just using Mastron. I used Primo a few times. I didn't found it did anything more spectacular to me than the Mastron did.
Yeah.
And it's more expensive generally. So I was usually just opting for Mastron. Yeah.
Yeah. Makes sense.
Yeah.
Bro, I had to fucking pay $150 for a bottle of Primo recently.
Oh, geez, that's brutal.
A friend did.
Yeah.
A friend did.
That's rough. Yeah.
All right. I got to ask these last couple questions. Is it gay to share your deodorant with your gym bro mid-lift because he smells?
Like a little bit, but it's also, it also would be like, it would be not cool of you if he's now smelling like shit and then the fucking girls are all like smelling and be like, yo, this guy fucking stinks. So you kind of got to be a bro. So like for the girls in the gym, he doesn't smell like shit. And if you're training with him too, then it's like almost making you look bad by proxy that you train with the stinky guy.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, it's a little fucking gay sharing deodorant, especially if it's not spray on deodorant. But it's probably worth the gayness in that case, you know?
Yeah, that was very intuitive.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would probably say that. I mean, I think you should probably, if you're like, I would throw it away. Like if you're like reusing it and then like, you know, like you're smelling it behind your back and shit. I mean, and
if he was actually like smelling that bad, now he's touching his deodorant to his armpit. I don't know if I want to touch that on mine after the fact. So yeah, I mean, if you're going to carry deodorant in your gym bag and you're going to share it with your bros, just bring spray on deodorant. Then you never need to worry about it, you know?
Yeah. 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 Luis Almeida asks, what's the fastest speed that Iain allegedly has done on his new bike? Allegedly is all caps.
Allegedly. Yeah, allegedly in Mexico. Well, I guess you guys are miles an hour. I know it in kilometers an hour. I'm in Canada. So I've done over 250 on it. So 250. Yeah. So I've done 155, 160 on it. Yeah. So nothing too crazy. Nothing too crazy yet.
That's fucking allegedly sick.
Allegedly, yeah. It was in Mexico. It's okay. It was on the Autobahn. And I did it. I brought my bike over to Germany and did it there. It was perfectly legal.
That's fire.
Yeah.
Siri asks, what would it take for you to make a comeback to the stage?
I mean, it would take my wife having a kid for sure. Look, if she got pregnant tomorrow and like got past the point of like where pregnancies are scary still, I would probably make a decent attempt at it. So I don't know. It depends. I mean, I wouldn't make an attempt at it to like try and be super serious. And like, I don't think I'm ever going to be as good as I once was. I don't think I'm going to be 7th at the Olympia in today's crop of guys. I don't think I would be as good as I was when I was, 30, 31. But I would, and I seriously would want to do like let my pro card expire and go do an amateur show. Cause I think the content would be fucking hilarious if I like show up my like local Ottawa show and like
crazy.
Go, so, and I could relinquish my pro card either way. So I don't actually need to let it expire or whatever the rules are. I mean, I could just say, I don't want to be a pro anymore. I don't know how the rules work, but I think guys can, like Roman Fritz, when he turned pro way back in the day, he won his pro card once, didn't feel he was ready to turn pro, relinquished the pro card and turned pro again like a year or two later. And then took that one. So I don't think I necessarily have to be a pro. So, it would be fun to just like, do a whole fucking video series of like starting from the ground again of like, just make a fucking joke of it and show up at my local show and like, go to Canadian nationals and do all that kind of shit and, make my way back to try and qualify to the Olympia, like as if I was starting from scratch, like regional show, national show, like work my way up and try and get back to the Olympia stage, I think would be a hilarious like series to do. And I would do it like I'm getting a bit older and, I definitely don't want to like go crazy with drugs at this point in my life. Like it's just not worth it for what there would be to gain. Like it would just be, do a short blast of it to like short blast from a career standpoint, not drug standpoint, like a short blast of career, come back to the stage to do that kind of like one run just for fun. But like, I don't have any inclinations to like get back up there and try and compete for 5 more years and done 40 or anything like that,
Yeah. I think you should 100% do that though, for sure.
It would be hilarious for sure.
No, you have to.
Imagine the pictures of me next, like imagine being your first show, like your first local show. Some kid that's like, 19 has been on his like weight loss journey and he's going to do his fucking first local show. He's like, just done like his first little cycle of Anavar and then he like competes against me, then I'm standing on stage next to him like, hey, fucking, won fucking bunch of pro shows and shit. I'm showing up at local shows. Definitely, I mean, it would just be hilarious,
Definitely don't announce the show.
No, if I was going to do it, I wouldn't even say what show I'm going to do. I would just like, start prepping kind of slowly. I mean, but yeah, I mean, it would be funny to do for sure. Yeah. And it would also be fun to do it and like see how little drugs I could do it on, especially for a local show where it doesn't matter much. Like, see if I could just do like barely anything, just like, do like 300 milligrams of test and 200 milligrams of Mastron and like, what, do I look okay? Or am I going to really look like shit? Cause I'll probably look like shit, but I'd like to see it, just to try it, like how low I could do it, for the beginning ones where it doesn't really matter much,
Yeah. I think it'd be cool. I think you could definitely do it.
Yeah.
I mean, some people don't believe him, but like, I believe Larry when he had to like really sink down like fucking 60 pounds for like that one show with the cap.
Yeah.
So he just took like it was like a TRT and Anavar and maybe a Clen or something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, he was, at this point in my life, like I could hold 255, 260 being off everything. And like my strength is pretty good still. Like I could train with any pro bodybuilder and keep up no problem. Like from a strength perspective, like it wouldn't be very hard.
Yeah.
So, I don't think I would need a ton to hold on to the muscle. It would just depend how hard I have to push the diet and how much I'm able to hold on to with it. So,
Gotcha. So I ask one last question at the end of every podcast, every guest.
Sure.
But if you were to disappear from the world tomorrow and you had one message that you could send to the entire world today, what would the message be?
Oh, that's a deep one. Man, what kind of answers do you usually get here? I don't know. I mean, if there's one thing I like learned, over my career of bodybuilding, I think is it's like, and this is something Chris has talked about a lot too. It's like, I think people really try and like repress or like shut down like the hard feelings, like especially in bodybuilding, like when, you have like bad experiences in bodybuilding or like things aren't going your way, you really try and like shut it down. And I think what that ended up leaving me with at the end of my career is like, it went by really, really quickly. And I didn't enjoy it as much as I think I could have if I kind of just let all the feelings that kind of came with everything just kind of like flow through me and kind of like feel everything a bit more, where I was kind of trying like to push down a lot of negative feelings and stay so locked in and focused that I kind of like lost all of it. And I think if there's one thing I would give to people, it's to like, just kind of let all those emotions, good and bad, just kind of like sit in them and feel them and like soak them in and like be better because of them. And don't try and like push them away. I think there's so many good lessons and so many like good moments that happen, like, in these small like nuances of like feelings that I think we really lose out. And I definitely noticed it being on the other side of bodybuilding is that like, it feels like it happens so fast. And I feel like I don't remember a lot of it because I was really trying to like go to the next thing, go to the next thing, go to the next thing. And like, if there was like things that I didn't want to think about going on, like from an emotional standpoint, or from like a bad season of things that I didn't like, or, whatever it was, I kind of tried to like, get them out of my mind, stay locked in, keep pushing forward. So I think just like, feel all the things you feel, like, don't be afraid to like feel the good things and the bad, and like, just really embrace all of it. And I think you'll be a lot better off at the end of it because of it.
Fuck yeah.
Fuck yeah.
That was awesome, bro.
All right,
Thanks
dude.
for
Well, I
coming
appreciate
on,
you having
dude.
me. Yeah, thank you, man.
Yeah. Later, brother.